welcome to the 387th episode of the Random Podcast from Heck. My name is Tony. This is the podcast about random things in the world of entertainment, which includes movies, TV shows, and comic books. Big shout out to Andrew Loken. He is a big supporter of the show. You can be a supporter by going to patreon.com/gmanfromheck. Any amount you can commit to will be awesome. If you commit at the Rick Jones tier or higher, you get access to the Secret Podcast from Heck, which is an additional 30 minutes of podcast entertainment every single week. I'm currently looking back at the John Romita Sr. Stan Lee era of Amazing Spider-Man. So we're looking at like 1967. We're in the middle of like some Doc Ock issues, and things aren't looking too good for Spider-Man. But sometimes I do off my mind topics, just random things. I have something in mind, might be a little different than what I've done before. Not too much, but 30 minutes extra podcast on top of this. If this is not enough, or if it is enough, you can still get more. You support the show. But if you can't commit to a monthly commitment, you can also help out by going to coffee.com/gmanfromheck, and you can buy me a virtual cup of coffee or four. That's ko-fi.com/gmanfromheck. And if you're like, well, I don't know if I want to buy a virtual cup of coffee, you can also go to patreon.com/gmanfromheck, and you can buy some older episodes of the Secret Podcast from Heck, some of the off my mind topics for $3. If you're using the Patreon iOS app, it's going to be marked up. They mark it up 30%, not me. So use a browser if you want to save that 30%. What is going on with the show? Thank you for being here. I appreciate that. This week, we got a kind of a lot going on. So I'm not going to do everything that I normally wanted to do because I'm doing a kind of variety of stuff. The movie feature, I think I mentioned it last week, is going to be Presence. So I had to choose between Presence and I keep forgetting the name of the Mark Wahlberg, Air Flight Risk. I think it's Flight Risk. I went with the Presence. It's a kind of like a Steven Soderbergh directed movie, but it's like a haunted house movie, but it's not like your typical haunted house movie. So definitely have things to say about that. It's pretty interesting. We have some new shows. There is this show called The Other Couple. I think it aired in like Europe like a year ago or so. It's a Sam Heughan movie, or Sam Heughan show. And you know, I'm a Sam Heughan fan. I think he's a cool guy. He's a good actor, and he's from Outlander. He was also in Bloodshot. I watched the first episode. It's a Starz original, which I don't know, maybe whatever. It's on Starz, so you can watch that. I don't know if I'm going to continue. I'm definitely going to continue watching it. I don't know if I'll continue covering it on the podcast. It is interesting. There, the way it starts off, and it's like it's one of those like things where you see something happen, and then all of a sudden it's like backs up, and so it's going to lead to this. So it's like, how did we get there? So I'm intrigued. So you can hear about that. There is also another new show called Prime Target. This is a Apple TV Plus. Now, with Prime Target, they dropped 2 episodes, and I only was able to watch 1 episode this week because of time and everything like that. But the thing about Prime Target, what intrigues me about this, and this is another one where I don't know if there'd be interest in, I would like to continue covering it, so we'll see how it goes. It's definitely a good show. It's like a thriller, whatever thing, but it centers around this young math genius at Cambridge. He's like a graduate student or something like that. But what caught my attention, as you may know, I am a math teacher by day, and this show is called Prime Target, and it deals with like prime numbers because he figures out he thinks that there's a pattern with prime numbers, and there's not. There's no way to determine how to find prime numbers, but he thinks that there is something. He's always looking at these. So every once in a while, you get these little bits of like math stuff. It's not like overly dry or anything like that, but I find it, I appreciate what they're doing, but it's not too much that it's just going to like make you roll your eyes or anything like that. So he thinks there's this code, but there's some people that are trying to gatekeep the code or stop the code, or so people are, I think what's going to happen is he's going to be on the run. Someone's going to be after him, trying to kill him or trying to do something about this because he knows or he's figured something out. So, which hence the title, Prime Target. So I think that could be interesting. So like I said, 2 episodes are out. We have the return of Severance on Apple TV Plus, also Apple Plus or whatever. 2 episodes dropped. I'm only going to talk about I debated. This is hard for me. I really wanted. I mean, 2 episodes are out. I feel like I got to talk about both episodes because I love the show, but at the same time, there's just so much other stuff, and I don't. And it helps me because, well, at least for now. So the show starts on Fridays, and I try to get ready to record and do everything so I can edit on weekends and get it posted on Sunday. So I don't know. I really don't want to be like a week behind for the entire season. So I may at some point like double up and catch up. But for this week, we're just going to talk about the first episode of Severance. So that way, also for you, in case you haven't watched both episodes, it gives you a chance to get caught up and so forth. And then we got another episode of Harley Quinn, the animated show. And I think that's it. And then comics and the news. With the news, we have the Oscars came out, and I haven't looked at the Oscar nominations really. I just looked at, I think I looked at like Best Picture, and there's like 10 movies listed. So I don't really follow the award shows at all because I think there's a problem there. Just wait, and I'll get to that in just a second. But I thought it was only like 5 movies nominated. Now there's 10. That's kind of crazy because now you're saying that the voting is going to be split 10 ways. So that's going to make it tough. I think that the main thing for me is most of the time, and maybe this says something about me, most of the time I haven't seen the majority of movies that have been nominated. And I think what I find interesting is, the movies that are nominated are like the fine art, the classy stuff, or, all this stuff. But then what does that say about, because a bunch of people, like fans, whatever, were kind of commenting or probably complaining, whatever, that there's no Oscar nominations for Deadpool and Wolverine. Now we're not talking about like Best Picture, Best Actor, or something, anything like that. But why is it where a movie like Deadpool and Wolverine, one of probably the most successful movies of 2024, huge box office success, nominated for nothing? What does that say? What does that mean? I just find it weird where this is a movie that people want to see. People are paying to see this. People have probably seen it. I saw it twice in the theater, so I paid twice. So people are seeing it multiple times or just actually venturing out to the theaters. But there's like no recognition. So according to the Academy, it is not a worthy movie. I just find that really weird, that they're 2 totally different things. But I think now going back to like, no Oscar nominations for that. But there's like nothing for like video effects or VFX or whatever you want to call it. And it was just like nothing. So that just seems kind of weird that it was just so harsh like that. Captain America, speaking of Marvel, Captain America Brave New World. Now, at one point, I haven't heard too much about this, but some people were talking about the budget of the movie. And I guess at one point it was reported that it was going to have a $350 million budget. So like, holy crap, how can this movie have $350 million? And if it has a $350 million budget, how the heck is it going to be profitable? Because, they say, whatever the magic formula is, it has to make 3 times the budget to be profitable. You would think it should be double, but I guess you have just so much marketing stuff. Because you got your budget that you have to make, and then I don't know if it's just a distribution and just the advertising and promotion, all that stuff. I don't get why it has to be 3 times as much, but that's what they say. So if we're looking at that, that's a lot of money, and I don't know how it's going to. I think it's on trajectory. I think for like maybe a $95 million opening. I don't remember if that's what it was. So that's a lot. But apparently, I forgot who it was. If it was Hollywood Report, someone reported that like no, it's actually like $180 million. I forget who it was that said it was $350 million. It was like maybe they didn't just know what they're talking about, but it's just. Yeah, I mean, 180 to 350. That's a bit of a difference there. James Gunn, he posted a Supergirl image, just like the back of her head. So they started production on it. So people are like, let's go, and all that stuff. So did I say Superwoman? Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. So we have that, and I look forward to seeing that. So they started production on that. James Gunn also I think it was on Blue Sky. He was talking to some people like what is canon, what's not, because like what's going on with the Suicide Squad, is that canon or not? So James Gunn said that the only thing that's canon, is pure canon, is Creature Commandos, because that's the only thing under this new DCU banner, whatever they're called, DC Studios stuff. But he said that Rick Flag Jr. was killed because Rick Flag Sr. said so on Creature Commandos, not because Rick Flag Jr. was killed in the Suicide Squad. He said that pretty much like most of Peacemaker is canon, except for like the Justice League stuff at the end. We saw kind of like cameo glimpses, whatever that. So most of that is canon. And I think what he said about like Suicide Squad is it's kind of like a misremembered memory or something like that. So it kind of happened, but maybe not exactly the way it happened. So that's interesting. I don't know. So we'll have to wait till we see more stuff from DC Studios to see like what that means. Oh, speaking of awards, I've never once like really cared or listened to this or searched them. I don't know if they do an actual awards show or what everything, but the Razzies, Joker 2 and Madam Web got the most Razzie nominations. So here's my thing about it. Yeah, those two movies, well, Joker 2 was disappointing to me. Madam Web, yeah, there are some issues with it. I thought there's like glimpses of potential, and I think people were like way too harsh on it. But yeah, it wasn't a great movie. My problem was the villain and whatever. But the whole Razzie Awards, it just seems weird. Like, let's focus on being negative, and that's what I don't think is cool. I mean, I really don't think we need to say, oh, this is like the worst performance or worst movie. And it's like there's so much negativity in the world. Why do we need to focus on that? And, maybe it's supposed to be lighthearted or whatever, but still, I don't think anyone wants to be told that their movie is so bad or something like that. I just think it's so unnecessary. What about some rumors? Gotta have rumors, right? There's a rumor that the Fantastic Four is going to play a big role in Avengers Doomsday. I mean, that makes sense. And apparently, that people are saying like, oh, they must be rewriting stuff because originally instead of Doctor Doom was going to be Kang, but now it is Doom. So is like Robert Downey Jr. The question is he going to appear in Fantastic Four? Is he going to be any cameo or anything like that? I really don't know. Another rumor: Chris Pine may be in Star Wars Rogue Squadron, which I don't even know what's the status of that, because it's happening, it's not happening, it's happening. So I don't even know. That could be fine. Chris Pine's a good actor and everything, but sometimes I worry that when you get the big name recognition that it's gonna be distracting. So, but we'll see. I mean, I'm okay with that. John David Washington is rumored to possibly be the new T'Challa, or maybe T'Challa's son. And I think they're talking about like multiverse stuff, that maybe he's his son older, and who knows. And I'm not going to say it. I will say it because I've said it so many times that I hate to say it, but yeah, I think they should recast. And like I said, Black Panther is too important of a character. He means a lot to a lot of people that I think we could have him. But then again, yeah, you can have someone else. I just. Whatever. I mean, I'm looking at it as like he's still alive in the comics. He's the king of Wakanda. He's important and everything, but he is just a character. So I guess the question is: do we honor the character, or do we honor the actor who portrayed him in several movies and is no longer with us? It's tough, and I don't think necessarily recasting is like an insult to anything, because I mean. They say the show must go on. Is that being cold? No, you're honoring what Chadwick Boseman did. I mean, no one's taking that away. And I don't think like having someone else is going to change that. Does Don Cheadle playing every time he appears as Rhodey, is that an insult to Terrence Howard? You get what I'm saying. I mean, that's totally different, but they're separate. And it's not like, I don't know. Let's move on. Maybe that's going to happen. There's another rumor. I don't know about this. This could be true. Marvel apparently wants a Deadpool and Wolverine trilogy with Hugh Jackman. Of course they do. Why wouldn't they? That movie was huge. But there's a difference between wanting something and actually like pursuing it and making it happen. Because again, Ryan Reynolds just recently said, "Yeah, I don't want to like really be the star of a movie, anytime soon because I don't want to miss out on my family stuff." And it takes a long time. So I don't know. I mean, let's say I don't even know how they could accommodate a schedule. Like we're all going to shoot like this many days or do something. Who knows? But yeah, I mean, everyone would want a Deadpool and Wolverine trilogy, but doesn't mean it's going to happen. I think I mentioned this last week, but I saw it mentioned like again. Actually, I actually read something because I didn't read anything before. I just saw like a Facebook post or something, some random thing. So Benedict Wong is rumored to be in the lead for Strange Academy, and Doctor Strange is going to cameo because I don't think he wants to commit to it. So we'll see if there's any chance of that happening. Who's to say? And then some comic news. Chris Claremont is going to be returning to Wolverine and Kitty Pryde. So that was amazing. I love that miniseries, and I was been thinking about reading it again just because I love Kitty Pryde so much and just the whole ninja stuff. But that was just a great time, and that was like right around when I started reading comics. It really changed who Kitty Pryde is, and that's where I think that was like my introduction to her. And then, going back and reading like who she, so I could only imagine if you knew the character before, like when she was Ariel and Sprite and then Shadowcat. So he's apparently going to go back to like right after that mini, like that time. So fingers crossed it's good. We'll see. I forget who's doing the art, but I'll definitely check it out. And then the last bit, more comic news, is there's going to be a Captain Planet reboot comic. So Dynamite Entertainment, which they're doing some cool stuff. You definitely should check them out. But they're looking at doing a Captain Planet reboot with David Pepose. So I'm loving what David's doing on Space Ghost. So they're looking at doing Captain Planet. Eman Castillos is doing interior, who also did the art for like Vampirella or something like that. I don't know much more information other than that. I didn't dig deeper for that, but I would probably check it out. I'm going to be totally honest. I'm not like a big Captain Planet fan. I never really watched it or was into it or anything like that, so I don't know a whole lot about it. But I think it could be interesting. It's why not? It could be worth checking out. So David's doing some cool stuff. So we'll have to see what happens. And for me, since I don't have a horse in a race, is that the saying? I'm not too concerned it has to be awesome. Or, with Space Ghost, I was like, no pressure, dude. It's like, I love Space Ghost, so you could better do it. I mean, no pressure as in, yes, there is pressure. And I got some pressure to put on a really good show because there's so much more to talk about. But that's going to be the news for the week. With comic books, Gotchaman what was it? I think it was number 6 came out. And I also realized I think the first trade is available too. So I kind of want to get the trade, just have it collected. Yeah. So this week's issue or this month's issue, it was okay. It's I feel not that it kind of was filler. I mean, let's be honest. And it's basically what's his name? I was going to say Keyup. No, but who I'm talking about. If you know, he. See, I don't want to spoil things, but basically they're supposed to go on a picnic and then end up going on a treasure hunt. So yeah, we got that. It was fine. I mean, yeah, it was fine. At Image, there wasn't a whole lot that I read. There was G.I. Joe Real American Hero 313. And what was nice about this one is Destro versus Cobra Commander. And it's kind of silly in a way, but it was also kind of cool where we've got this big battle going on in Springfield. Everyone's there pretty much. And Destro, he is ticked off because Baroness got shot. And her life is on the line. So he is and it was because of Cobra. So he's like, I'm gonna go get him and everything like that. He's like in his bunker, and there's like all these other people there, like Zartan's out there. We got like Snake Eyes, Scarlet, Jinx, Storm Shadow, and just like all these other people, and they're like, okay, Destro, we're on the same side, it's like us versus Cobra, but he's like, I'm gonna go in alone and type of thing, and just seeing kind of Destro being a badass, and because he's this weapons dealer, so or whatever, so of course he's gonna be armed and everything, so it's kind of cool as he works his way into this bunker where there's like it's full of like armed soldiers, or not that many, but. So yeah, it's just some cool stuff. That's all I'm going to say. Then there is also, I think is that it? No. There is a Hyde Street #3. I was like, I knew I read something else. Hyde Street. I'm so fascinated with this comic. It's so interesting, and just seeing, they got this little kid like a Boy Scout, and they're trying to trick people that kind of get their soul type of thing. And then you got the Mr. X-Ray dude, with this. It's such a cool, the visuals and everything, and just the art. It's Jeff Johns, Ivan Rice. You should be checking out. So definitely get issues 1, 2, and 3. Void Rivals 16 came out. I haven't been reading that. I'm so curious, but like I said, I think it was like issue 2 or 3 was the last one I read. World Tree 33, is that issue 12? That doesn't sound right. Is it? I don't know, but I didn't read that because I'm behind on that. Then at Marvel, so yeah, it didn't seem like there's a whole lot this week. Marvel had a few, some Amazing Spider-Man 66. Big sigh. This is another, the 8 Deaths of Spider-Man. Now, what's interesting is, so yeah, I was right. I wasn't really sure when I was saying it because I think it was last week. There was I think it was issue 65 Point Death, which I just think is silly when they do these point issues with the title instead of a number. Do 0.5, do 0.1, do just, yeah. So this one, not a whole lot happens here. So basically, Spider-Man, his last battle, he's been made the protector of humanity or whatever by Doctor Doom. He's got to fight these different beings, whatever these things. And, He can die 8 times. I think he's died, was it 4 times? 4 times, and he's won 5 battles or something like that. But the last one really took a toll on him, and he's like, I quit. He's like, that's it. He's like, what's the point? Because he saw, like, he witnessed so many deaths, and he just went through it, like death. And, he was really toughing it out because, he's dealt with a lot. And I think it's just got to the point where, he's like, what is the point? Why bother doing anything? And like, there's this one dude that he saved, and he's like, all he did is just, because he died. And he's like, I just delayed the inevitable. So, what's the point of doing anything? And he runs into his girlfriend, and he's just like, it's affecting him as Peter Parker because like Aunt May's like, I need your help with it. And he's like, why? Whatever, it'll happen. It'll get done. So he doesn't really snap at her, but he's just not his normal self. And then his girlfriend's like, what's going on? And he's like, she's like, you need to talk to someone. Let me know. If I can help. Otherwise, I'll talk to you later, type of thing. And then you see on the cover, but wait, why is he smooching with Black Cat? So he ends up going to talk to her, and yeah, so that was just kind of weird. I like Black Cat, but yeah, it was kind of weird. We had Blade #4. Who's reading that? I still need someone to tell me, like, should I be reading that? I want to read it. I want to like Blade. I've said this before, but yeah, just a recent attitude just really turned me off of him. Then we have Doctor Doom and Rocket Raccoon. Yeah, that's right. Doctor Doom and Rocket Raccoon. Just really weird. At first, I was just like, what is this? I'm not going to read this. But then I was like, wait, J. Michael Straczynski wrote this. Okay, fine. I'll read it. And it makes sense in a way because, if you may recall, and I was like, oh, yeah. I almost forgot, where Doctor Doom was like in Guardians of the Galaxy, like for like 2 minutes. And I don't remember this, where apparently Doom and Rocket Raccoon like switch bodies something happened and they like switch bodies. So Doctor Doom realizes that Rocket Raccoon is actually like really smart. He's got all this like technical know-how. That's how he can build all these weapons and everything. So he's like, calls him for some help, and there's like, it's a really weird pairing, and I don't know how I feel about it. Like I said, it was definitely interesting, but it feels like it's done just to be weird and goofy, but it's not purely weird and goofy, just a little weird and goofy. So I don't know, but I think that the main problem for me is I really dig Doctor Doom as a villain. I'm just like I'm so over him now with this Sorcerer Supreme Doom and all this stuff, because like this event hasn't even started yet. Or I mean, it's almost starting now, and I'm just like so over it. Because then we have Fantastic Four, which this is One World Under Doom, like on the cover. So here it's actually, I guess, starting, and this was a little more interesting. I felt so. Reed he's trying to figure out magic, because he's almost obsessing over the fact that he can't get into Latveria. Dr. Doom has put this big magic dome over the entire nation of Latveria. And he's just like, what is he doing in there? What is he up to? He's got all this power now, so he's going to be doing something. He's like, he has to be stopped, or he has to be monitored, or whatever. So he's just really, like, again, like, not in a good way. He's really obsessing. Like you're not Dr. Doom's keeper. Someone else can worry about this. So they're trying to figure out what to do. And Sue's like, hey, why don't we talk to someone else who knows some magic? And then she's like, the Black Knight, he's actually a man of science, and he's got like a physics degree or something like that, and he knows magic because he's got the magic swords and all that. So they go and talk to him, and at first it's like, what's going on? So it's like, Ryan North, he can do some funny, writing in that, but the way he's like portraying Black Knight, and I hate to say it, I'm not the biggest Black Knight fan, even though I think he was in the Avengers when I first started reading. So you would think I'd have like this nostalgia or fondness, but I'm just not the biggest fan of him, because I feel like he's kind of like this weird character to have like in modern comics. He's a knight, he has a sword, and sometimes he has a flying horse, or sometimes he has an atomic steed. It just seems like weird. And like, what do you do? I mean, you have a sword. What is he going to go around like stabbing or cutting people? So I just don't see like the practicality of him. And again, nothing against whoever created him or anything like that, but he's just acting kind of weird and kind of goofy in a way. It's like, okay, whatever, that's fine. And he's like doing some stuff, so it's like maybe it's taking a toll on him. But it is an interesting issue where because I don't want to give away too much stuff, but they work with him, and they actually go in the past to try to find this other like sword. So it's and then something happens. That's all I'm going to say. Of course, something happens, but yeah, it's like, what are you going to do now, Reed Richards? Helverine #2. I wonder. It's like, should I be reading Helverine? It's only issue 2, but I don't want to read it. But I'm so curious. We got Iron Man #4. I'm not crazy about this run of Iron Man. So they defeated what's her name. Tony's got his armor back, but there's like some magic stuff infused with it, and so he calls Wanda to check it out. The Mysterium, the mutant magic metal, not magic, but the super metal that was with the armor has been kind of removed, and apparently now there's like all this like magic stuff infused in the armor, and she's like, this is way too much magic. It's like that should be even possible. So she's like really concerned with. So she's like, don't use this. But Riri Ironheart is there too, and so she kind of like makes a decision, and I think they're asking for trouble. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I'm not loving this run. But we do have Melinda May, so I think it's cool to see the cavalry in the comics. I'm down with that. We had Mystique #4. This one, I don't know if I was reading this too fast, because it's like, oh, I got to read all the comics. But at one point, I'm like, wait, who's going on? Could be part of it. I mean, it should be obvious because you have all these different characters, and his mystique is like appearing as everyone. She's taking on the forms of different mutants, which seems like a weird, almost like a violation. But when she does this, I didn't think it was possible. But it's almost like she's using their powers. It's like, how can she do that? Because at one point, she changes into like Angel, and then she's flying. It's like, okay, maybe she could do that, but if she does that, she has to really understand like his physiology, because she'd have to make her bones hollow, and she'd have to mimic or copy the muscle structures for the wings, to make them strong enough to support you and lift you and propel you. And yeah, so she's. We see her. I'm going to spoil this. She changes as Marrow, and so she's, which is weird because then she can pull the bones out that that Sarah would use as blades in that. So it's like, how is she? This is like a part of her. Is she pulling? Because that's the other thing. It's like, how does Mystique change on all this? And I don't remember if my crazy memory, or if it's actually like that. Mystique is actually naked all the time because she's changing clothes when she changes forms, but does she actually make weapons in that? But it's all part of her. So it's like, can she make a gun in her hand, which is really her hand? And then the question is like, how does she make all this extra mass? I'm sure all this stuff has been explained, but can she change herself into the Blob? If she changes herself into the Blob, does she still weigh like 120 pounds? Or I don't know how much Mystique weighs. Let's say 120. This number that came in my head. If Mystique's 120 pounds, she turns into Blob. Is she still 120, or is she changed into like 300 or whatever? I don't even know what the Blob. I don't know what anyone weighs. But yeah, Nick Fury Jr. is. I'm getting some new respect for him thanks to Declan Shelby, because I've never been the biggest Nick Fury Jr. fan. Phoenix number 7. I didn't love this issue. I'm not. I don't know what it is about this one. Maybe it's because Phoenix in space. I'm not a big Galactic Comics fan. I don't know what it is about it. It's just even though I love sci-fi. And I have a hard time with the Marvel space stuff. So they're trying to fight with Thanos. And again, it's like, I used to once upon a time, like, Thanos is cool. He's, a cool villain, but I'm just tired of. And it's just like, what is he doing? What's going on? And, yeah. So, and Rocket Raccoon is also here because Jean's like, asked for his help. So how does this tie in, time-wise, where does this fit, continuity-wise, what I'm trying to say, where does this fit with the Rocket Raccoon Doctor Doom? It doesn't matter. But we got Carol Danvers here. I mean, so, yeah, I don't know. Another series I feel like I should be reading is Scarlet Witch, but I haven't been. So issue 8 is out. Let me know if I should be reading that. What am I missing? I didn't read Star Wars: The Battle of Jakku, Last Stand. This is issue 4, and that's because I fell behind. I think I'm like 3 issues behind now or something like that. So yeah, I need to get caught up on that. But I didn't mention this. Alex Segura, yeah, who has been writing these. He's going to be writing a new Star Wars series that takes place after Return of the Jedi. So like an ongoing Marvel Star Wars comic that we haven't had in a while, that Charles Soule was writing for a bit. And I think Phil Noto might be doing. I don't know if he's doing all the art or the covers, but Alex Segura. I mean, he did the Poe Dameron novel. That was good, and he's a really great writer. So, and he's a cool guy. So I'm excited for that. TVA, Time Variance Authority number 2. I didn't finish this. I started reading it, and yeah, I couldn't get into it. I don't. Something was just off. I'm trying to figure out where this is trying to fit in, because we have Mobius from like the Loki show, and we even have Effie's here, but then we also have Spider-Gwen. So it's like, where does Spider-Gwen here fit with what she's doing in her series and stuff like that? And I think this is the regular. I'm pretty sure this is our like Earth was 65 Spider-Gwen. And there's some other people, but yeah, I don't know. It's just hard to get into it. Ultimate Spider-Man 13. This is good, but there's one thing that really bugs me. Because, I mean, even if you look in the cover, it kind of gives it away. Maybe you can get a sense of what my problem is going to be. So we have Kraven Hunter. Spider-Man and Harry Osborn have been missing for like weeks or something like that, and Spider-Man's suit has been kind of with the AI that Peter set up, like with his brain patterns or something like that, has been posing as Peter, and so they've been captured, and I think they're in the Savage Land. If I could be wrong, I thought that's what it was, and Kraven's got some crazy scheme going on. But the thing is, and I think, was it Vulture was there? Someone else was there. And Kraven, he's done some digging. He knows who they are. So this is my problem, where I don't like when villains discover the hero's identity. And now if you have like all these, because who else knows? I don't know if all the Sinister Six or if Kraven is just whoever's there at the time. But you can't have this, because I did an Off My Mind episode on this, where if the villain knows, then that is a huge threat, because after this, so even if Peter and Harry are kidnapped here, they're gonna get out eventually. They're gonna make their way back home. But then what's gonna happen with Kraven? Is he gonna get arrested? Is he gonna get killed? Because it's like once he knows the identity, that's a huge threat. Because even if he goes to jail, he can just like tell anyone, and then Peter's always going to be at risk. His family's going to be at risk. So unless somehow he gets amnesia, but there's the fact that other people know too. Yeah, I don't know. Uncanny X-Men #9. I could not get into this issue. I like this, but maybe it's Wolverine calling Rogue moonbeams. It just throws me off. I don't know if the art was just off a little bit, but and it's like we got this wolf pack thing. So someone's making these like wolf sentinels. I think it's one of the Trasks, some Trask. I don't know what, I forget. I can't keep track of Trask. I thought they're all dead, and there's always someone else that pops up. And they're making these like hunting robot things, but they're not really reliable or controllable. But then the person in charge is like, when could I get a dozen of these? And yeah, so then we got I'm not completely sold on these New Mutant kids. So yeah, we'll see. There's what if Galactus transformed Rogue? This was one of the last, actually maybe not. It was close to one of the last comics I read. So I just started skimming it, and from what I gather, Rogue she came across Silver Surfer, and then she basically absorbed his memories and his powers, and that's how she became a herald. But it's not like Galactus chose her like in the other ones that we've had. So I don't know. Yeah, I didn't fully read that, so I could be missing something. Wolverine Revenge issue 4. I feel like this took a little bit of a time jump, because it says 20 years later. So I think that's an interesting move. And but we get to see what's been happening, because this world has just been thrashed. So many people are dead, and so Wolverine's a little older, but there's still people that are after him. So it's kind of there's some cool things here. And again, Jonathan Hickman, Greg Capullo. So it's a cool book, and I don't know how I feel about the fact that again, so many people are dead, but it's a way to tell a different story. There's no limitations, so that's a cool thing. And then there was X-Men Xavier's Secret. So I'm like, what is this? I was like, what possibly could his secret be? Now the thing with this, it felt, as I'm reading this, I'm like, what is going on? This doesn't make any sense. Because it starts off with like Jean and Cyclops. I'm like wait, and I guess this is before. I should look up the synopsis, because I guess this is before like her series, before she went out into space. And Scott is just kind of being weird. He's like really obsessing over like seeing like the Northern Lights or something like that. And he keeps looking out, and she's like, well, I can just pull in some energies or change something. He's like, no, it has to be natural. So it's like, what's happening? What's going on here? And yeah, it was just okay. So here's okay. Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, so these are reprinting some Infinity comics. Okay. So, in the wake of the fall of Krakoa, the X-Men are forever changed. As Jean Grey prepares to take her place among the stars, she and Cyclops share a last night together, only to discover a hidden mystery that threatens to pull them apart. And with that, because it starts off with like some guy like just walking through like the winter wilderness, they're like something's calling to him. And then I think that ends up happening to Cyclops as well. So it continues. Meanwhile, what was supposed to be a mundane article about Charles Xavier's monstrous acts during the war turns into something far stranger for journalist Sally Floyd. Can the X-Men survive the shadows lurking in their past, or will this new era begin in tragedy? So I don't know if they actually said what this secret was. I'm curious, but I guess, I mean, is this canon? So collecting X-Men from the Ashes Infinity Comics 1 through 6 for the first time in print. So this is basically a $6.99 comic, which you could read for free if you have the Marvel app. But it's in print. So yeah, you got that kind of weird situation there. So yeah, I wasn't super crazy about it. I want to know what this secret is, and I don't even know if I missed it in here or what. At DC Comics, there was Absolute Wonder Woman. I forget what issue this was. Absolute Wonder Woman. I really like this series. This issue was off a little bit for me. I think it's just a matter of me personally adjusting to like the magic nature of Wonder Woman, and but it is cool seeing like the differences, and I do applaud Kelly Thompson just like taking some liberties and just really changing the character, because we see Etta Candy and her sister, which I don't know if I knew she had a sister. I mean, maybe did she have a sister, or did I just forget? Anyways, so we're seeing some cool stuff, and I like how it feels different, and it should, because if you're going to do like a new take on a character, we should not be seeing the same exact thing that we already have, because there's no point of that. So I like the fact that it has this different vibe to it, and there are some pretty big differences with Wonder Woman. So I'm that's really digging it. Justice League Unlimited. I think it was issue 3, and this was an okay issue for me. I mean, it's cool to see like all the stuff happening. I almost feel like there's like too much happening, but that's kind of the point where we have so many different characters available at their disposal. It's like, okay, we're going to send this person, and sometimes it almost feels like, wow, you're sending a lot of like the powerhouse characters, but why not? If you're trying to stop something, save people, don't just dance around. You got but it's like all these people, are they all, it's not like they're all sitting around the watchtower waiting, because they all have their own lives. Because, the captain, Captain Shazam, or whatever you want to call him, the captain, he goes on a mission, but it's like, is he sitting around? Because I don't know, since I haven't been reading the last few issues of Shazam, but he's got his hands full. And same thing with, Superman's busy in his different books. It's a cool idea, and Dan Mora's art is amazing. And then there's that Airwave character, which we got to keep an eye on that guy, because he's up to something, obviously. And then it's like, wait, Aquaman's there. It's like, I thought he went through some portal thing, some other dimension. Then it's like, this takes place before Aquaman #1. It's like, okay, way to coordinate that. Wonder Woman #17. This is like a 17 issue story arc. I don't know where this is going. I like seeing the different Wonder Girls, like Donna Troy and Yara, what's her name? I always forget her name whenever the mic is on. Yara Flor, right? And Cassie Sandsmark. I love them, and we see them going up against some different villains. The narration keeps throwing me off because it's like, wait, who is narrating this? Is this that what's this? I don't even remember the guy's name because that's how long this has been. He's not the general. I don't think he's called a general, but that old dude that somehow has so much power amassed, the king of the world or whatever he was calling himself. So I'm just ready for it to be done because it's like, ugh. But yeah, we'll see. Superman 22. This is a Doomsday stuff. So we got this race of people. They want Doomsday because Doomsday destroyed their race or whatever. And Superman has them with that LexCorp or Superman Corps or whatever. They have Doomsday in a stasis thing. So they're like, we want Doomsday. But then at one point they're like, we have use for him or something like that. So, but then later they're trying to kill him. So it's like, wait, do you want to use him for something? Or are you going to kill him? And it's just weird because they're in their big ship. So Superman and Superwoman or Lois, whatever you want to call her, Super Lois. This other being is like, we come in peace. And then they're like, if you don't give us Doomsday, we're going to destroy your world. It's like, that's not very peaceful. So we'll see. Detective Comics 1093. So all these kids someone's targeting like homeless kids who commit little petty crimes, and this killer doesn't think they deserve a second chance or whatever. So Batman, the Bat family, they're trying to protect all these kids, and we finally get a glimpse, sort of, as to who the killer is. And so it's like, who could that possibly be? Is it Bruce's new friend, old friend? Yeah, so we'll see. We also had Black Canary, Best of the Best issue. I think this was issue 3. I really don't know, like, okay, where is this going? What are they doing? How long is this going to go on? Because, the main thing is Black Canary is fighting Lady Shiva. And there's supposed to be like some prize money. So what happens here is Batman shows up. This is like before the fight starts. Like, well, Black Canary's training with her mom. So her mom is like really sick. I think it's like cancer. She's like gonna die. So at first it's like, does she need to fight this so she can save her mom type of thing? But it's like not like she needs some money to save her mom because she's Bruce Wayne. Hey, can I get some money or can I borrow some money? So it's like there's something going on. But Batman shows up while she's training because he's like, you're a Justice League member. You can't be fighting for money. But she's not telling him why. So Black Canary is getting her butt kicked, and I don't know where this is going. Then we had Metamorpho Element Man. I think it was issue 2. I didn't read that because I didn't really read the first issue. Got the Flash. I actually picked this up, and I regret it. I'm just like, I still don't know what's going on. And as I start reading it, I was like, I don't care, which really bums me out. Power Girls 17. I haven't read the last few issues just because I've been kind of let down, and I'm trying to be selective with what I'm getting, what I'm reading, especially if it's not something I'm super crazy about. Green Arrow issue 20. This was interesting. I'm not really sure where this is going, and it's a nice, refreshing. It almost feels like a different feel on it. And now, correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't know. I'm assuming this is taking place in current time. It almost feels like it's like a flashback story, like an earlier era for Green Arrow. But I'm enjoying it. And then that's pretty much it. There's Catwoman. Someday I need to start reading Catwoman again. There's Harley Quinn, but that's it. So that is going to be comics for the week.
All right, I'm going to talk about a show that came out on Starz last week, The Couple Next Door. So it's a Sam Heughan show. So if you're familiar with Sam Heughan, he was in the movie Bloodshot. He's also in Outlander. So, but the thing about this show is, I believe it came out in 2023 in England somewhere. So it's weird that it's being listed as like a Starz original, but someone else made it, and that I don't understand how that works. So I don't know if I don't think I'm going to talk about this entire show, but It was like over the weekend. I didn't have anything. I was like, oh, I'll just check this out, and it's interesting. I definitely, I like Sam Heughan. He's a really good actor, and I'm so behind on Outlander, and I don't know if I'm ever going to get caught up. But he's a really good actor, and so I thought I'd check it out. And just the way the show, as the first episode opens, I'm like intrigued, like what's going on here, and so I definitely want to know. And the show's been picked up for a second season, which I don't know if that's kind of spoil what that means. I mean, it could be like different casts or different people, because I don't know if everyone's going to survive from the way it opens. So I'm just going to talk about the first episode, and we'll see how time goes. I don't know if I'll be able to keep up with it, because we'll have some other shows starting up and so forth. But so episode 101, it's Welcome to Suburbia. It starts off, you see like this cabin in the woods, and then there's like a gunshot, and this woman screams. So some like redhead, like it's almost like she's in a nightie or something, like some white, like silky thing, barefoot. She comes like running out, and we see Sam Heughan, like a leather coat. He's with this dark-haired woman. Like, are they running after her? Then there's other dude, he's like running too, and he has a gun. He's calling out to Evie, that's the redhead's name. And he tells her to stop, and then he tells, or someone says like Pete, I think it was Pete and Becca. They're like, no, or something like that. And then they're on the ground, and then he's pointing the gun at Sam Heughan. Sam Heughan's name is Danny, and Becca. He's pointing a gun at them, but then he like looks away, or then he's pointing a gun at Evie. So it's like not really like one scene. It seems like it's just like a hodgepodge of scenes, whatever. And then Pete like charges, or then I think Danny charges at him, and then there's like another gunshot, and it's like opening credits. So it's like, okay, what is going on? Because then after the credits, it's and it's just like there's graphics and flowers and whatever stuff. So it's like in suburbia. So you see Pete and Evie. Evie's the redhead. Pete, they're moving to a new house. They're like in their moving truck, and as they're like unloading, their neighbor across the street, Becca, she kind of greets them. She noticed that Evie's pregnant. She says she's 24 weeks. Pete's like trying to like lift a little dishwasher out of the truck, and she's like, "Oh, Danny can help. He can lift anything." So it's Sam Heughan comes. He just like picks up the thing. And he's like, "Where do you want it?" He's like, "Well, it's a dishwasher." So he's kind of not really happy with that, because he's a little emasculated or whatever. But he does help with the moving stuff, which is nice, since Evie's pregnant, all that. They move the sofa and everything like that. And then the wives like, here's some beer and stuff like that. They talk, and then eventually they leave. And it seems like Pete doesn't like Danny too much, and obviously he's a little jealous. This big rugged, handsome dude or whatever. But then he's like, well, at least I won't have to lift anything ever again. But then Evie's like, we're going to be a family in this place. And he's like, we are? She's like, oi, this baby's as much yours as mine. And she's like, no one needs to know how we got here. And he's like, I know. So it's like, okay, what does that mean? Because he was just like it's like, he should be a little more excited. So is it not his kid? We'll find out. So we also see Danny and Becca have like a son, like a preteen, he's like maybe like 8 years old or something like that. And as the kid goes off the bed, and Danny says that, he figures Pete doesn't like him very much. But then they start kissing. Her shirt comes off. They're like start making out and stuff like that. And then there's this other neighbor, this older dude, Alan. He's like he's a creepy dude spying in a telescope. And his wife calls down. It's like Alan, dinner. He's like, I'll be there in a minute. So he's just like, ugh, gross. So next day, time for work. You see like all the cars leaving at the same time. And then Evie gets up. She's looking out the window. She's like, did Danny tell you what he does for a living? And he's like, no. And she's like, check him out. So he's like, black shirt, black leather coat. He's got a motorcycle. And Pete's like, I wonder if he's a cop. And she's like, oh, more like the Terminator. And he's like, oh boy, here we go. And then they start going at it. Evie, then she goes to work. She's introduced to her new class. So she's a teacher with little kids. And, they have questions and stuff like that. One asks if she's got a baby in her tummy. And cause I think her mom was pregnant too. And then, it seems like it's this kid like really, it's like drawn to her or whatever. Pete is like a writer at a newspaper or something like that. He has this really good story, this file, he shares it with his coworker about like corruption in the council or something like that. And the guy's name's Robbie Spencer. But then the boss comes, he's like, we don't have resources for this. He's like, oh, but I could do this all on the side. He's like, no, you can't. It's like, look around. It's like, there's only 4 staff left. And so then he's like, the mayor is going to be attending the opening of the library. So why don't you go and do a nice piece on, whatever, public, stuff like that. So he's like, all right. Then Danny, he gets a call for donor. So I think he's a police, but he's like, he escorts because it was like a donor delivery for like a heart. And there's no ambulances. So he basically takes the case and drives it to the hospital. Becca is a yoga instructor, and Alan the perv, he's in her class, and he can barely like stand and keep his balance. And then like after class, but at first when he's like balancing when she's walking around, it's like, is he hoping that she's going to like help him like stand or whatever? But then after class, he's rolling up his mat. He's like the last one. And she suggested he try beginner class. And he's like, do you teach the beginners? And she's like, no, I don't. My colleagues do. And he's like, well, your leaflet says that you do one-on-one classes. And she's like, well, I'm fully booked. And then he's like, well, maybe I'll just soldier on here. And she's like, no, I think if you want to continue, you need a beginner's class. It's like, my colleague Tim is very good. So it's like, does she know that he's a creep? I mean, maybe she picked up on it. Then we see Evie. She's in class while the kids are out somewhere. The little girl, her name's Molly. She comes in and she's like, can I touch your tummy? And she just automatically does it. And again, because I think her mom was pregnant. And then little Molly, she's like, I can't feel anything. And Evie's like, maybe she's just asleep. And then, the kid leaves. So she's concerned. She tries calling Pete, but he's at the library opening because she's like, oh, baby's quiet. I think I'm just going to go, just go to the doctor's, check it out. Danny, we see him drop off the donor organ. Evie's sending more texts. So she's laying in a hospital bed. Doctor comes with the ultrasound little machine thing, tries. And she's like, maybe I better get my colleague to have a look. And this was like horrible to watch because, as she's like pushing the thing there, you see Evie's face and she's trying to smile and, she knows something's up and she's just like looking, you just see her face. She's trying to hold it and she's like about to crumple. And then she's like, there's no heartbeat, is there? And then Doc's like, I'm going to get my colleague. And then she's like, did anyone come with you? And she's like, no. And she starts crying. So then we see Danny at like a shooting range at the station. This other dude wants to compete for 50 quid. And, he's like, oh, whatever. Then we see Evie sitting in her car in the driveway. The door's just open. She's just sitting there. Becca comes out. She must have noticed like the car door open. So she comes. She's like, are you okay? And Evie's like, my baby's heartbeat has stopped. It's over. And she's like, sob. So Becca's like, brings her inside. And, she tells Evie, she's like, you don't know me very well or anything, but anything you need. And then she's like, do you need some space? And she's like, no, please stay. She's like, you're so kind. And she's like, we've tried so hard just to get to this stage. And Becca's like, I'm so sorry. At the shooting range, Danny says, he lay off on betting. He's short on cash. He's got money issues. Friend's like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know. He's like, anything I can help with? And Danny's like, it's complicated. So not sure what this is about. There's something here going on. He said that, he got in like a situation, he dipped into savings or something like that. And then Fred's like, well, if you want a side job, kind of doing what we're doing, escorting people from point A to B. He's like, I do it. It's like, I haven't gotten caught. It's the easiest money. And Danny's like, what, are you sure? He's like, who are you working for? And the friend's like, oh, some businessman. He's like, there's a job coming up, $5,000 for 30 minutes work. He's like, I don't know how desperate you are, but, give it some thought. Pete comes home. Evie's like, where have you been? And he's like, well, I just got the text. He's like, I was stuck at work. And then he looks at her and Becca. He's like, what happened? And she just looks at him. He's like, no. And he goes to her and like holds her and Becca's just sitting there with him. So it was very sad and tragic. Then Pete's like sitting outside. Danny comes out, brings him a beer, and Pete, wipes his eyes. He says, Danny's like, it doesn't feel like it right now, but they'll get through this. And Pete's like, we've already been through this more than you can imagine. Danny's like, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. And then, there's like a koi pond there they're looking at. Pete says that they came with the house. But they're like a lot of work and all this stuff like that. But then Danny's like, you can tell me to piss off. He's like, I know it's hard. He's like, give her some time. Maybe you can try again. And Pete shakes his head. He's like, not with my puny sperm. He's like, we've had 2 failed IVF attempts and we had to use a sperm donor and it still hasn't worked. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry, mate. And Pete's like, I can't tell you how much she wants kids. It's all she talked about since uni. And so they've been together 17 years, so Danny's kind of impressed. And then Becca comes out and says, Evie's pretty exhausted. So Danny tells Pete to, look after each other. He puts his hand on his shoulder as he leaves. Eva's sitting on the couch, and she's just like, just in a daze. And, Pete comes in. She doesn't even see him. So then there's like a flashback. It was like another time at the hospital. Pete's there. I think that's when they're about to have the procedure. And then another, must be like later in the morning or something like that. Pete sits next to her on the couch. And she's still like doesn't say anything. Then later, Evie's walking down the street. She sees two kids like filming a video, doing like some TikTok thing or something like that. Little kids. Pete's jogging. He sees a dad with a kid, so they're just like really, they're reminded everywhere. Then we see Evie opens a card. There's like this big like religious cross or whatever, and condolences. And, your thoughts. You're in our thoughts and prayers and all stuff like that. So yeah, and there's messages from her mom and dad. Then Becca meets with her yoga class outside. Creepy Alan is watching. So they start running. They take a selfie or she takes a selfie. And then Alan goes to his desk, opens her like Instagram because she posted a video right away. He starts to save the image to his desktop and his wife calls to him. And he kind of gets annoyed. And, he has this like protected folder in his desktop. He has to do like a password and it had like Becca's name in it or something like that. So he goes down, his wife asks if he talked to this guy about a stair lift. And he's like, well, money's tight. And she's like, oh, but, it's not so tight that you can shop online because there's a package there. And she's like, wouldn't it be nice? Because so she can't go upstairs. She's in a wheelchair or something like that. She's like, wouldn't it be nice if we could be upstairs together again? There's kind of like a slight pause. And he's like, of course. And she's like, or don't you want me up there? He's like, don't be daft. He's like, I'll get it sorted. He takes a package upstairs as a book, Complete Yoga. So he's trying to brush up on his yoga so he can get back in her class. Then Becca wonders how Pete and Evie are doing. She says she likes spending time with them. Danny says that, just give him some time. And she's like, well, I'm bored. And then she like straddles him. And then she's like, I was thinking about the couple we met in Marbella. He's like, maybe we should look them up. He's like, oh, maybe. So Pete's doing some stuff. He hears a car. He noticed like a dressed up couple arriving at Danny and Becca's. He's like looking through the window and he sees like, then while they're inside, he can see Danny like standing next to the woman and Becca puts her arm around the dude. So I think Danny and Becca are swingers. Then it's like 2 months later. So Evie's back at school. Her boss, principal, whatever, asks if she's had counseling or something like that. And she's like, oh, it's been 2 months. I've been cleared. I don't know if she meant with counseling or with the doctor or whatever. But then she's like, do you want me to explain it to the kids? And Evie's like, no, she can handle it. And then as soon as she walks in, she's like, hey, kids, and whatever. And then the little girl, Molly, she comes up to her and gives her a hug right away. So I don't know if she knew or, so that would be hard. Because, even if they didn't know, it's like they're going to notice right away. They're going to be like, what happened? And just the fact that she was in her class like one day and then this horrible thing happened. Oh, man. And then we see, like later, I don't know if it's the same day, Molly and Peter are lying in bed, and then he tries, like, kissing her, but then she, like, rolls over. And then he says that, they should probably get up. She says that she doesn't want to go. Oh, so it's clearly a different day. He says that, they care about you, and Evie's said that Becca's invited them over for a barbecue tonight, and Pete's like, oh, we might need it after your mom's cooking, and she, like, smiles. So then we see, like, this countryside, and at first I thought it was, like, a church. There's a very passionate priest. But then Pete and Evie arrive after the service, so I think they were having a church at her parents' place. It's a pretty big place, but again, it's kind of like out in the country or whatever. So they're at dinner at the table, and her sister's there. Must be, I'm assuming it's her husband. I think it was her husband, some dude. But her sister has like red hair too, and the mom has red hair. So Evie's mom gives Dad like a look, and he's like, "I'm sorry for you both," and Evie. She doesn't really roll her eyes, but something like that. And Pete's like, oh, thanks, it's much appreciated. And then Evie's like, did Mom make you say that? Because I'd imagine you think it was God's punishment. So her brother-in-law, he tries to change the subject by commenting on the food or whatever. And Evie's like, actually, I want to know. It's like, do you think losing my baby is God's punishment because we use IVF? And he's quiet for a bit. And so obviously the parents are, or at least the dad is like super religious or whatever, because they had the church there. He's like, I'm not judging you, my child, but I know what the good book says. And he quotes, behold, children are a heritage from the Lord, the fruit of the womb, a reward. It cannot be a gift from God if it's not natural. And she's like, there's always a quote, isn't there? And she's like, well, here's one you made me learn by heart. I am the Lord who practices steadfast love, justice, and righteousness here on the earth. And then she's like, where is it? Where is the steadfast love from this God of yours? And Mom's like, it's not for us to know God's will, Evie. And Evie's like, she's like, don't. She's like, if this is truly God's will, then he's no God of mine. So Pete tries getting her, just like leave it, drop it, whatever. And then she tells her dad, she's like, I never felt welcome here. She's like, even when this was my home. And she's like, same for Rachel, her sister. She's like, you can ask her. So it's like, way to throw your sister under the bus. And she's like, that's how you made your own children feel, and still do. And she gets up. And Pete excuse himself to go after her. So then it cuts to they're at Becca and Danny's later, and she tells them about her dad, and they change their clothes, they're kind of dressed up and everything, and like Becca's got like this red dress, like low cut, it's like pretty dressy for a barbecue. So Evie like downs her wine, and Becca's like she's like, oh sorry, whatever, and she's like, oh no need to apologize, let's get you another. So then Danny sits next to Pete, and at first I'm like, okay, are they gonna try to do this like swinger stuff with them? But then Danny sits next to Pete and pulls out like a joint, and Pete's like, "Are cops allowed to do that?" And then Danny's like, "You gonna dob on me?" So I don't know if dob means are you gonna rat on me? I don't know. And then after Pete finally takes some, the ladies come out, and Evie calls Pete a naughty boy as he's like coughing, whatever. Then she's like, Evie says, "Danny, how do you feel about showing me your sexy motorbike?" And he's like, "Thought you'd never ask." So they all go to the garage, and Evie says that she's always fancied going on one. Pete's like, "Since when?" And she's like, "There's still things about me that you don't know." So Danny asks if she's ever been on one. She's like, "No." And he's like, "Oh, you want to put that right?" She's like, "Now?" And Pete's like, "Is that wise? You've been drinking and smoking." And Danny's like, "Oh, it's only a spin around the block." And then he hands Evie a helmet, and of course, creepy Alan is watching. So as they're riding, she's like holding on tight around his waist, and she loves it. And he tells her, hold on, and she is very tightly. And then at one point, she like takes her arms off, and she spreads her arms out, and he's like, "You're crazy." But then she's like back to like holding him. It's like almost like what's the word? Not romantic or correct, but it's like almost like she's caressing, not quite. And it's obviously it's still wine, but it's like, come on. So they return, and she says she loved it. And then Danny gets a call to his friends. He's like, "If you want in, this is your chance." And it's like starting to like drizzle now at this point. So he picks up, so his friend tells him, he's like, "Pick up your police bike and be at the airport within the next hour." So he doesn't tell, which is a little surprising, but so I don't know what this money situation that he's in. We don't find out this episode, but he doesn't tell Becca what's going on. He says he has to go for an emergency hospital delivery. He's like, there's no ambulance available. So then they're at the airport, there's like a private jet. This dude gets off and he goes into his van, and the friend's like, "All this for a briefcase?" And Danny's like, "They wouldn't want us if it wasn't a threat." So they stop at some little like business place, whatever, kind of like on a docks, and there's like a little business shack or something like that, like an office, and they can see inside, there's like a window there. So the dude opens up the briefcase, and there's inside the building, and there's like cash in there. So the friend's like, "You got to ask yourself, why would they fly in a case of cash?" So Danny says he doesn't want to think about it. And then this dude comes out, and Danny walks up to him, and he hands him like 2 fat envelopes. And then this other dude comes out, and Danny's to tell his friend, he's like, "Who's that?" And the friend's like, "That's the boss, Mr. Spencer." So Mr. Spencer, was it Robbie Spencer? That's who Pete wanted to write about, with like the corruption in the council. So that's like our full circle connect. Well, not that this has to do anything with the Woods thing, but there's connection there. So then we see Pete's in their kitchen, and Evie walks up to him. She takes a coffee cup out of his hand. She starts kissing him, and he's like, "Oh, are you sure you want to do this?" Because obviously they haven't been intimate since she lost a baby. And she's like, "Yeah." So then they start kissing her. It's like, "Oh, we should go upstairs." And she's like, "No, here." So they try doing a table to table, like kind of like falls over. So they go on the counter and do. Later, Danny arrives home. But it's like, wait, he's leaving his bike out in the rain? It's like it was just in the garage. It didn't make any sense. But Becca kind of steps out like on the front porch as he's texting his friend or something like that. And she's like, "What was it?" And he's like, "It was a heart transplant." And she's like, "Are you okay?" He's like, "Yeah, it was a stressful ride." He's like, "Hopefully we made it in time." And she's like, "Oh, you probably saved someone's life." She's like, I'm proud of you every day." But he basically lied to her. Later, Pete's like cleaning up like broken plates or something like that from their little activities. Evie comes in and asks if he needs a hand, and he's like, "No, I'm okay." But then he's like, "That was different." But she's like, "Oh, we christened the kitchen." She's like, "It was fun, wasn't it?" And then this is like the really weird and awkward. It's like, I want to know, this is why I want to see the next episode. She goes to take the trash out to the bin, and it's like, it's raining, drizzling pretty hard. And she sees Danny taking the bin out too. So then she's just standing there in the rain and just wearing like a shirt, and he stares at her. So it's like, what is going on? She's just standing there in the rain, because if she's gonna run out to the bin, it's like boom, boom, in and out, or out and in. She should be back in, but she's just standing there in the rain. So she's gonna be like pretty drenched. So she's obviously
feeling something for Sam Heughan, and I guess there would be a question, if they are a swinging couple, how does Pete feel about this? That would be the question. And maybe that's why Pete had the gun, or maybe she wanted to join them, but then he's like, nah, or maybe she knew he wouldn't, or we'll have to see. So it's interesting, it's intriguing. I don't know if it's like a typical podcast show, but I am curious. I mean, I definitely will watch one. I don't know if I'll be able to keep up with it, and I really don't know if I'm going to talk about it. So that'll be a good question, and it might be too late, but hopefully I'll get some quick feedback. We'll see how things go. So that's on Starz. All right, Harley Quinn, Season 5, Episode 2, Back to School. And I really like the animation. Harley can be a little annoying sometimes. It can be a bit much, and I know that's probably the point. But what was more annoying is who shows up in this episode. Oh my goodness. I'll get to it. When we get there. So Harley brings Ivy into their new apartment. She's like blindfolded, and it looks pretty amazing. It's like really like nice and fancy. She said she had a bunch of witchy decorators that Lena introduced her to, like kind of really set everything up. She also got Ivy like a housewarming gift, the coasters with their faces on them so they won't stain their overpriced coffee table. And Ivy's like, I've never been so in love with you, because I guess the cleanliness and everything is like really turning her on and all this. They start smooching, and then a doorbell rings, and they try ignoring it, but it keeps like persistent. It's King Shark, and Harley tries shooing him off because they're about to get it on. But then he mentions that he's got a date with a lady shark as well. And Ivy's like, you came all this way just for a date? And he's like, no, it was like also for the kids. So the baby sharks that he has, they come running in, and this is the annoying part, is they immediately start trashing the place. Like one is like chomping on the counter, like literally chomping, like destroying this, brand new, pristine, super expensive counter. And King Shark doesn't even say anything, like, because he just tears off this piece, and he's like totally fine with it. Harley's like, we just spent a fortune on this place. So it's so, and I know I'm getting way overworked or over whatever. It's just a show, it's fiction, but it's just so incredibly stupid that he doesn't care. It's like, how can he not know? And he even mentioned, he moved to Metropolis. He mentions like the high property tax, but he says it's worth it because they have, good school with like the Dutch immersion program or something like that. So he's aware of the concept of money and all that, and he just does not care that his kids are trashing the place. And the fact that he just brings them there. But then they ask if he has a tranquilizer gun for that one or whatever. He's like, I know he's a handful, but I'll be by later tonight to pick them up. And Ivy's like, whoa, we're not babysitting. And he's like, it's not called babysitting when you're their godmothers. He's like, and since every nanny has quit or filed a restraining order, it's like, you two are my last resort. And Harley's like, yeah. It's like, I can't promise to be alive when you come back. And then King Shark's like, more likely they'll kill you before you kill them. So it's like he's dumping off his kids. Doesn't even know if they're home. Doesn't even know if they're going anywhere. Like maybe they have plane tickets and they're about to head out. It's just rude. And it's annoying. And it bothers me for some reason. I don't understand why. So he's like, they'll kill you before you kill them, unless they eat peanuts. If they have peanuts, they will die. He's like, are there nuts in the house? So that's the other thing. You're going to impose this like no nut rule now, even though you gave no warning or anything. You can't expect someone to just automatically go by your. And then he's like, so are there any nuts in the house? He's like, I mean, besides you two, ha ha ha. He's like, have fun now. And so he starts, leaving down the hall, and Harley's like, yeah, well, I'm going to give him lots of peanuts. And then he yells back, she's like, no, you won't, Auntie Harley. And she's like, oh, damn it. She's like, what are we going to do? And Ivy's like, I don't know what you're going to do, but I'm going to go meet Lena at the university. And Ivy's like, what? You're leaving me with these creatures? And she's like, hell yeah, I am. She's like, you're going to do great. It's like, I love you, bye. And then as soon as she leaves, like, Harley gets tackled by one of the sharks. So Ivy's at the Botany Research Center. Lena tells her, Ivy's going to love the dean. And Ivy says, it's like, you mean he's going to love me? And they like laugh. And Lena says that they're going to turn Metropolis into paradise. And Ivy asks, like, what's his name? So then she introduces this dude, turns around, Dr. Woodrow, and Ivy kind of gulps, and he's like, Pamela, and she's like, Jason. Lena's like, oh, you two already know each other? So Jason Woodrow, isn't he like Floronic Man or whatever his name is? So his salad kind of like attacks his arm and he like tears it off. And Ivy's like, I gotta go. And Lena's like, she says to Jason, she's like, I'll take care of this. She runs after Ivy. Lena says, she's like, what the heck? She's like, I went through a lot to set up this meeting. She's like, you can't just run away. Ivy apologizes for some reason. And Lena says, she's like, I don't know what happened between you and Dr. Woodrow, but this is a big opportunity and you have to shake it off and get your act together. So Ivy's like, well, we have a really complicated history. And Lena's like, well, you need to move forward. It's like, you're a different person now. But it's like, Lena doesn't know what happened. At Harley's apartment, you hear like all this crash and like sharks laughing. She tricks him into like locking him into his room or a closet, but then he starts like banging on the door. One starts like chomping through the door, like destroying the door. Lena calls to check out on her and then tells Harley there's this kids party that she can bring the sharks to. Ivy goes to Jason's class, he's teaching, and she thinks back to when she was a student in his class, and he like asks her, he's like, what's the difference between plant and human cells? And she's like, well, we should really be looking at the similarities instead. And she rattles like all this stuff that's like whatever. But then you find out that they're already together. There's this couple. So, she like just kisses him. And he's like, oh, we can't be seen. He's like, I could lose my grant. And he's like, we should go somewhere more private, like the lab. So in the present, he's surprised that she's back. He says that she must really hate him after how things ended. And she's like, well, I was startled, but like my grandmother says, like, you can't do anything about the past. So, how about we, start fresh? And he's like relieved. So he offers to take her a tour of the campus, and she's like, great. She's like, let's start with the lab. And he's like, the lab? He's like, aren't you full of surprises? And she's like, oh, you have no idea. So apparently they used to take care of some business there. So at this big fancy building, I wasn't sure if it was a house or what. It's not a house. Harley tells the shark kids not to act up inside. And apparently Princess Pippa is there, but it's like a fake Princess Pippa, like a party entertainer or something like that. Then Bane shows up. Now, I was a little confused, and I don't know if this is something that happened during the Kite Man show. So Bane's with this lady and a little girl. So I'm like, who's this lady? Because I was like trying to read up and trying to find something, and I don't know if there's Rebecca something, which I think might be Golden Glider's mom. I don't know if that's who that is. But they're with this little girl. Harley is like, what are you doing here? And Bane's like, the property taxes are murder, but it's worth it for the schools, which is like what King Shark said. So the kid's name is Goldie. It's supposed to be Goldilocks. And she's like, have you officially adopted her? So he says, well, you know how it is. The kids escape from a fairy tale situation. They are fictional. They can't take care of themselves, but the paperwork is easy. That's my weak attempt at Bane. I guess the party's actually for Goldie. And, because Harley wasn't aware either. And the little Goldie, she's like, do you like my princess dress? I think it's just right, because she's Goldilocks. And then Chomp, that annoying, stupid little chomping shark kid, rips her sleeve. He has a smile on his face. And she's like, you ruined my dress. And she starts crying. The shark kid laughs. His name's Sean. He's like, can't stop myself. Watch me run. And Harley's like, oh, he's just a little hyper. And Bane says that it's fine. And, it's nice to have a little youthful energy there at the club. So it's like some big fancy club that they're at. His partner, whoever this lady is, I don't think they're married or whatever. But she's like, honey, it's not like she could just join. And Harley's like, why the hell not? She's like, what's wrong with me? And she's like, nothing. It's just that you have to be approved, and they're very selective. And Harley's like, which is why I want in. I want to be in the kind of clubs that wouldn't have me as a member. And this place is perfect. She's like, who do I have to talk to? So Bane's like, well, it's the Vincent Edge Club, so you'll have to talk to Vincent. And he points, at that moment, he's yelling to this old lady. He's like, what'd I tell you about leaving scratch marks on the tile? Because she has a little walker, even though there's like tennis balls on the bottom. I guess it's still scratching up. So he kicks her out, but he like yanks the walker away from her, like throws it across the room, and she like falls over. And Harley's like, oh, no problem. She's like, I'll have him charmed in no time. Meanwhile, Ivy's impressed with Jason's lab. He says that the Luther grants have been pretty generous, and she says that, they must really believe in him, because she hasn't been in the lab, like this in a long time or something like that. So we get a flashback. They just did some doot in the lab, and he says that he hates that he has to go. And then she's like, well, first I really want to show you something. She says, I haven't shown this to anyone yet. So in this one part of the lab, she opens this little like partition, whatever. There's like it's almost like an incubator, and he's like, a plant? And she's like, you're not very observant for a professor. And she's like, hey, Frank, wake up. So it's Frank, her talking plant, but it's like a baby. So his eyes open up, Jason's surprised, and Ivy's like, meet Frank. He's part plant, part human. And Jason's like, holy fudge. He's like, that's amazing. And then Frank like mimics him, and, talks or whatever. Jason's like, how did you do this? And she's like, I've been infusing the soil with a special serum that combines plant and human DNA. He's cute, huh? And then Jason's like, he looks so fragile. But then snap, like Frank like kind of bites at his finger, and Ivy laughs. She's like, he's actually stronger than he looks, and he can defend himself. But he's also naturally impervious to pesticides and most poisons. He's like, this is brilliant. I mean, this is going to change the world. And she's like, he's not a thing. He's Frank. So she keeps talking. Jason's like preoccupied. So clearly he has other selfish career plans. His eyes are squinting a little bit. Because he's like, do you know what this could do for me? And she's like, what? For you? He's like, this secures my grant. Hell, this secures every grant I could ever want. He's like, I could be a billionaire. And Ivy's like, but I'm the one who made him. And she's not Ivy. I should be calling her Pamela. But So in the present at the club, Harley's looking for Vincent. For some reason, that annoying shark kid is with her. So I guess the other 6 or whatever shark babies are fine on their own, but this annoying one has to stick around with her. This is probably funny, right? No, it's not funny. She tells him to wait by this painting, but of course he follows her as she moves down the hall. And then she starts like dragging him back by his fin. And I don't know if that hurts him, but he's like screaming. He's like, you're killing me, or like that. And she gets close to him. She's like, listen, you dumb minion of a shark. She's like, if you fudge this up for me, you will find the other end of my bat so far up your blowhole. And she's like, and now he's crying. Why are you crying? I don't have a blowhole. So he cries. He goes across the hall. He opens his vent cover, and he just pulls it off. So there's no screws or anything like that. It's just so easy to pull off, which I guess that's just how it is. Pulls the vent cover off and starts crawling into it. So she curses. She's like, gee, Sean. In the past, Ivy or Pamela, she's like, that's not fair. She's like, you can't just steal him from me. And Jason's like, I'm not stealing anything from you. He's my property. You made this under my tutelage. It's like, and if you're worried about money, I'll take care of you. She's like, I don't give a fudge about money. And Frank has like tears in his eyes as they're arguing back and forth. She's like, I want you to tell everyone this is my work. And Jason's like, well, I'm not going to do that. And she's like, if you won't, I will. And he's like, oh, come on. You think they'll believe you over me? You're just a student. But how is he going to explain everything if he doesn't have, he doesn't know how she did it. Pamela, Ivy, she's like, will you lower your voice? You're scaring him. And she's like, Frank, it's okay. Don't let him scare you. We're going to leave now. And he's like, you're not going anywhere with that. And he yanks like Frank out of her arms, and Frank cries. She like lunges at him and tries grabbing Frank. He shoves her back. She crashes into a bunch of beakers like full of this green liquid. Green gas starts like going up around her, and he just like turns and walks away. And she gets up, leaps onto his back. Frank goes flying, and Ivy manages to dive and catch him. Jason gets up, runs to the door, and locks it. And the gas is like spreading. She's like, what are you doing? She's like, unlock the door. We'll die in here. And Jason's like, well, the plant won't. It's poison proof, remember? And she's like, Jason, unlock the door. And she's like coughing. She falls to her knees. And she tells Frank, she's like, don't worry. None of this is going to hurt you, Frank. She's like, you're safe. It's like, I got you. You're going to be okay. And then she sees a syringe with like the stuff that she used in the soil. She's like, maybe I will be too. She jabs herself in the arm. She turns green. She screams, falls to the floor. Vines push up against the window, the door from the outside. You see it in the hallway. Harley is crawling in the air ducts for Sean. She tells him to get back here. She's like, I'll give you all the peanuts you want. And Sean's like, Daddy said no peanuts. And she's like, I'll give you whatever you want. Just come back here. And then she falls through like a grate and crashes onto someone's desk. So someone's reading this big book behind, this big, richy, fancy dress. And she's like, holy poop, you're Vincent Edge. I was just looking for you. And she's like, Harley Quinn, I'd like to be a member. Huge fan of your club. Love how selective it is. Also, I saw what you did that old lady's walker. moi, chef's kiss. She's like, anywho, do you have like an on-site masseuse? Because beating people up wreaks havoc on my back. If you don't, you definitely should. That's what's great about me. I'm really good at telling people about stuff that they need, that they don't have. Oh, and those shark kids, yeah, they're my god kids. You should meet them. They're absolutely adorbs. And you hear people like screaming, like sharks, whatever. And there's like this alarm blaring. And then Sean's like, can't stop myself. And she curses. She's like, if you'll excuse me a second. She hops back up in the vent, and Vincent just looks up. He's like, So in the lab, in the present, Jason takes off his coat. He checks his breath like, because, he figures they're going to get to it again. But then he sees like the shadow, some really big vines, and he turns around and sees like Ivy like up high, like lifted by her vines. And she's like, oh, what's the matter, Jason? What, you don't like to have fun anymore? So then the vines go past him, like block the door so he can't get out. More vines like shattered his like big window off to the side and like block it. And he's like, look, whatever you think I did to you back in the day. And she's like, oh, you mean how you trapped me, left me to die? He's like, please, no. And she's like, too bad it didn't work out that way, did it? So vines wrap around him like tightly. He's like, wait, Pamela, calm down. And she's like, calm down, Pamela. She's like, because of you, people said I was a villain, that I was incompetent. And she's like banging him around, like, shh. And she's like, that I fudged up my own experiment and almost killed myself in the process. And that I tried to tell them the truth. But you know what? You are right. Why would they ever believe me over the brilliant Professor Woodrue? She's like, I trusted you. I looked up to you. I loved you. He's like, okay, I'm sorry. I was like, I shouldn't have done what I did, but you built a great life in Gotham. And she's like, shut up. She's like, none of that happened because of you. It happened in spite of you. He's like, please give me a chance. And then she's like, okay. He's like, what? She's like, I'll give you a chance. And he's like, I knew you'd have it in your heart to forgive me. She's like, you'll have the same chance you gave me. So Vines grabs some beakers and like smash them so the green poison gas rises. He's like, what are you doing? He's like begging some more. And he's like, Pamela, please. And she's like, it's poison ivy now. At the club, this is another, just makes no sense. It's stupid. Like the fake princess, she's like sobbing because her arm got bit off. I think that's a little small like whatever you call it. There's a baby shark has her arm in its mouth, is like doing a backstroke in a pool. There's this other guy sitting at the edge of the pool with his leg bit off, and he just looks like bummed. It's like, I would think if, there's sharks, I shouldn't have my other leg sitting in the water. And Bane and his lady and Goldie, they're standing on the side of the pool. Harley like busts through the vent, and she's like, what's going on? And then like she sees what's happening, whatever. Then animal control busts in. They shoot like tranquilizers, like tranq darts. And then Harley's like, nobody hurts my godchildren. And she starts attacking them, which is like, okay, they're just doing their job. Ivy comes in, whatever, and Vincent's there, and he like wonders what's going on. Harley like goes on complaining. Vincent is about to tell her and her kids, her kids are gross or whatever. But then Lena comes in and says like, oh, they would be perfect members. And Vincent's like, you can't be serious. And he's like, look what they did to the room. And Lena points out that it's like under her name. Like a lot of these buildings are under, the Lena Luthor, whatever wing of this. So she donated a lot of money. Later, Harley and Ivy are sitting in bed. They're having some wine. Harley says that Lena is like one of the nicest people they ever met. They don't really meet a lot of nice people. Then they start getting romantic. They're interrupted by Sean, who is still there for some reason. And Harley goes after him. Ivy like lies back, and she's thinking about what she just did to Jason. So again, she's like, I must have killed him. And, she's a bad person, but she doesn't just want to kill. But then the lab is still smoking. You hear some growling. This green clawed hand like scratches the counter, and it's wearing the nice watch that he says is better than Pamela or something like that. So he turned into Floronic Man. So he's not going to be too happy, I'm sure. So that was a Harley Quinn. Yeah. So it was like, yeah, it was an okay episode. I just was so incredibly annoyed by those kids. Okay, and now Severance, the return of Severance. So I know I'm behind, and so excited for this show. I'm just so immensely fascinated with just what is going on, and I think with Twin Peaks, that is my all-time favorite show, and I think I tend to really like the mind F shows and movies where you just have no idea what's going on, and I feel like that's kind of what we have with Severance. Not that it's like trying to copy or anything like that, copy Twin Peaks or stuff. Because we've seen other shows that have been trying to like be similar or whatever, just vibe and atmosphere and that. But the thing about with Severance is there's just like so much that we don't know, and that's what I find fascinating. A lot of times just the mystery, the secret, that's what keeps you going, keeps you coming back for more. And sometimes when you find out, what's going on, it kind of ruins it. Even like Lost, it's a good example where it's like what's happening and you see all these weird things. And we have that with Severance. Why is there a room in this office building with a bunch of baby goats? What the heck does that mean? What is these numbers that they're, looking at, trying to capture these like scary numbers, and that what are they actually doing? What does any of this mean? So I just think there's just a lot of cool things. And then with the way the first season ended, I was like, oh, holy crap. So we're just going to jump into it. Hopefully you have watched the show, you're caught up, and you just want to hear what's going on. Season 2, episode 1, Hello, Ms. Cobell. I was like, okay, what does that mean? So we see like black screen, and you hear like Mark S. calling out like to Devin, and Helly's like, We're all miserable. They torture us down there. But we're prisoner. And Irving's like, brr, yelling out. And then we see Mark S. going down the severed elevator. And he's confused, and he like kind of spins around, and then he like exits. He looks around the waiting room, the waiting area, like outside the elevator, and he starts like running down the halls. And it's apparently, I heard that he watched a lot of like Tom Cruise videos or movies, to see about how to run properly or whatever like this. And it took like months to film, apparently, because, you got this camera like following and just with all the twists, and it's pretty crazy. So he's run, turn, like all this stuff like that. Finally, he like slows down. He walks into what used to be the wellness room. Because, like you see, it's been like chipped off the wall, like whatever, like on a door. And inside, there was like 2 doors, but they've been like sealed over. But as he's standing inside the room, someone's like watching him from out in the hall. You can't really see it. Maybe I couldn't tell who it was, and I didn't like rewind to try to figure out. So he like turns, he doesn't see that there was someone there. So he goes back out, walks to the macro data room where he works, and then he discovers 3 other people there at like the 4-person like desk. So there's this young dude, old dude, and a lady. The lady is like, what's her name from Blink Twice and from Arrested Development? I forget her name. And then the old guy's like, oh, I suppose you're Mark S. I'm Mark W. And Mark S. is like, who are you people? The young guy, I think he speaks in a different, I think it's like Italian or something like that. He says something to the lady, and then the old guy, he's like, would you consider going by a different name to avoid confusion? And then Milchek comes in, in perfect Milchek style. He's got a bunch of blue balloons with like Mark's face under. He's like, welcome back, Mark S. Been a minute. So they walk down the hall, and he's holding these balloons, and he's like, where are they? And Milchek's like, I think it's best to save any queries till we arrive at the management office. And Mark's like, were they fired? And he's like, you can leave the balloons in my foyer by my old desk. He's like, we have much to discuss, and I don't want them distracting you. I assure you, they won't be taken. And he's like, Mr. Milchek, please. And then he's like, what you all did 5 months ago? So it's been 5 months. So what you all did 5 months ago was one of the most painful moments in the history of this company. So Mark's like, 5 months? He's like, I too was wounded by it, but we must be cut to heal, mustn't we? He's like, wait, did you say your old office? So this is the one thing that's interesting, is he hasn't been down there in 5 months. So that means that after that happened, Mark hasn't gone back to the office. Either hasn't been allowed, hasn't wanted to, what's going on. What's the crazy thing about that means that for Mark S., it's like 5 months of his life is just doesn't exist because he hasn't been down there. So that's the weird thing. And I feel like there's like just so much to talk about, like outside of like just the show. So I may do an off of mine about that. So then Milchek's like, Mark, this is Miss Huang. She'll be happy to mind your balloons while we chat. And Mark's confused because she's like a kid. So in the office, Mark's like, is it normal for a child to? And then Milchick's like, excuse a clutter. So it's Miss Cobell's old office, and Milchick still has boxes like still unpacking. And then Mark's like, okay, what's happening? And Milchick's like, Miss Cobell is no longer with this company. I now manage the severed floor. And Mark's like, what about my team? And Milchick's like, we didn't fire them. Helly R. and Irving B. both successfully made contact with persons on the outside, just as you did. Dylan G's Audi learned what happened after the fact. The four of you have achieved international fame. He hands him like a newspaper, and it says, Innies blow the whistle. So, and then he's like, as a group, you've become known as the face of the Severance reform. And Mark's like, Severance reform? He's like, have a seat, Mark. He's like, shortly before you mutiny, we installed security doors to keep you in MDR. This accompanied a punitive rendition of the Cure hymn performed by Miss Cobell. Do you recall? He's like, I do. He's like, I locked you in a room like an animal, Mark. As an unsevered man, I'll carry that knowledge for the rest of my life. But for the past 5 months, we've been asking how a sadist like Harmony Cobell could take fertile root in lemon soil. It's like, wait, what? It's like, and what that says about us. We also know Miss Cobell was at your sister's home when you awoke there. And Mark's like, yeah, why was that? And Milchick's like, we believe she developed an erotic fixation on you and had plans to pursue both you and your Audi in what might be termed a throuple. And he's like, what? And Milchick's like, thankfully, she failed at this. And Mark's like, you still haven't told me where my team is. And Milchick's like, we tried for weeks to get them back, Mark. None of them agreed. We told them of the reforms, but it wasn't enough. And he's like, except for me? Milchick's like, your Audi insisted on returning. In fact, he begged us to let him back right away. And Mark's like, so to others, they refuse? Yes. And he's like, well, I'd like to hear it from them. And Milchick's like, that's not possible. Enjoy your balloons. So Mark walks back down the hall with his balloons, and then he just lets them go in the middle of the hallway. So it's like, Milchick's going to see them. Is he going to be upset, or is he not going to care? So Mark is back at his old desk. Mark W. says that they showed up about an hour before he did. So it's a little cramped compared to their old MDR, but he loves the green carpet. He's like, ours was a creme brulee, and the keyboards were puce. And then the lady, I don't know if they ever said her name. It might be listed on IMDb, but she's like, they were purple. And Mark W's like, no, they were puce. I know, because it makes me nauseous, and I hate sweets. So the lady's kind of chewing on her pen. She like spied on Mark as before, by lowering and raising her divider thing. And then Mark W's like, speaking of which, how much do we see of that Mr. Milkshake? Mark's like, Milkcheck. And he's like, what? He's like, it's Milkchick, not Milkshake. He's like, and I don't know. So then the Italian guy, he says, Marco, where can I find some ink pencils? And Mark's like, supply closet. So he stares at him, and he says something in like Italian or whatever, and Mark's like, I'll show you. So when he walks by, the lady like gets up and follows, and she's like, so, did you really see the Audi world? And he's like, yeah. And she's like, how's the sky? He's like, I don't know. And she's like, what, you didn't see it? He's like, well, I went outside for a second, but I was distracted by my brother-in-law. And she's like, seriously? Because we made a list of what we'd most like to see on the outside, and the sky was an easy number one. Brother-in-laws weren't even on the list. Could you tell what state we're in? Because 3 of us put Wyoming on our input survey. Did you see any buttes? He's like, no. And she's like, oh my God, how's the wind? It's just like getting breathed on, kind of. And then the Miss Huang, she's like, hello, refiners. And Mark's like, hello, Miss Huang. And then I think Mark W's like, oh no, it's a ball game. And she's like, let's head to the kitchenette. So this is where they have the red ball, they roll it toward each other. But they're doing it at a table now. So all 5 of them are sitting at a table. Miss Huang, she has a red ball. And she's like, okay, so my name is Miss Huang. It's my first day here as deputy manager. I guess something about me that before this, I was a crossing guard. And they all look at her and kind of like at each other. Mark W. raises his hand, and she calls in him. And he's like, why are you a child? And she's like, because of when I was born, which makes sense. Why are you old? Because I was born a long time ago. So she rolls a ball to him. He's like, right, I'm Mark W. I'm from MDR department of Branch 5X, where I worked with Gwendolyn Y. So I don't know if that's the other lady. He's like, kind of fun fact about me is I thought I'd be permanently retired when my branch shut down. So this is a nice surprise. And then Miss Huang's like, Mark S. So he rolls it to Mark S. And he's like, I'm Mark S. He's like, I've been here about 2 years. Something about me. He gets a flash of his wedding photo. But then he's like, is that I'm lucky enough to have made 4 new friends today. And there's like a little forced laugh. And Miss Huang, she's like, that's nice, Mark, but I have to remind you that I'm a supervisor, not a friend. And she just gives him like a blank look. And he smiles like he's waiting for her to laugh. And she continues like this cold stare. And he keeps like the eye contact. He leans forward. He's like, 3 new friends? And then he rolls the ball. And she gets like a little smile on her face. And she's like, okay, congratulations to our 2 marks. It's like, and now, so then it cuts to like later in the day. It's like 5:10. He's at his workstation waiting for like, I'm assuming like the staggered leaving thing. So he turns off his computer and the little light by his desk. So he's the last one to leave, turns off all the lights in the room, goes to the elevator, goes up, and then back down. Like, because it's, again, just instant. So 9:04 next day. He walks into office. Again, I'm still not sure if that lady's name is Gwendolyn or whatever. And the Italian guy, what his name is. So she's like, what's your perpetuity wing like? Do the Egan's move? And Mark's like, no. And she's like, probably because it's an older branch. It's like, ours were animatronic. They even did a little choreographed dance. And then Mark W's like, so yours just stand there? That's weird. And then the Italian guy, he's like, in my first perpetuity wing, the Egans were brooms, each with a face made of a plate. And Mark W is like, a plate? And the Italian guy's like, we were very poor. So Mark, he just starts like writing like a note on a card like under the desk. The lady's like, did you guys have the CPR dummies? And the Italian guy's like, yeah. And she's like, what were those made of? And he's like, brooms. And then Mark W's like, did you have an elevator? And he's like, we had, how do you say, a rope? And the lady's like, Jesus. So at the end of the day, he folds up the note and he has it in the palm of his hand. So it's like, wait, why is he writing a note? He knows he can't get away with it. So Mark W is still there. Mark S says that he's heading out. He's like, you good? And Mark W is like, yep, you're just about to close out. So then Mark S is like, thank you. And then Mark W is like, my old team was a bunch of dirtbags. We never hit a quota, not once. But it seems like you really liked yours. So I'm sorry. And Mark doesn't have a reply. He's just, okay. So he just turns to leave. And then Mark W's like, good night, Mark. And he's like, night. He goes to like this little like coat rack, puts on his blazer, sticks a note in the other blazer hanging next to his. So it's Mark W's, right? Goes in the elevator, door closes. Door opens, 9:04, walks to the office. He's like, hey, everybody. The other 3 are just sitting there. Milchek holds up the note. Dear Audi, I don't know if this will reach you, but I'm writing to alert you to heinous conditions in the severed office to which you have transferred me. The branch is run by a shambolic rube who goes by Milkshake. And Mark's like, Mark S. He's like, oh my God. So Milchek continues, a man whose stupidity is rivaled only by that of the 9 core principles. So the others are just like glaring at him. And Milchek continues, if you must continue to send me here, please consider strapping a bomb to me so that I may explode both Milkshake and the very spirit of Kier Egan. Wrathfully, your innie, Mark W. So Mark S is like, oh my God, that's very serious. And then Milchek's like, is it earnest? Do you really think I'm a shambolic rube? And Mark S is like, wait, do you think I wrote this note? The Italian guy says something, and then the lady's like, were you going to frame all of us or just Mark W? And then Mark W's like, clever way to secure the name for yourself, I suppose. Milchek's like, I don't know why you hate this team. And Mark's like, I don't hate this team. And Milchek's like, you didn't even disguise your own handwriting. And then there's like some silence, like maybe he didn't think about that. And then Mark's like, you know what? I don't even know who this team is. I told you, I want my team. Which part of that don't you understand? Milchek just like stares at him. Then he pulls off Mark's like ID from his lanyard. He's like, Mark S., at this time, I revoke your status as department chief, which will be transferred to your intended victim, Mark W. And the other Mark stands up, I accept. So he's like, you will be relegated to the office and must check in regularly to your progress. The lady's like, do you even have a brother-in-law, a-hole? And Mark just like smirks. Milchick's confused. He's like, what's funny? He lets out a little chuckle. He's like, you don't know what I did to the kitchenette yet, do you? So Milchick's like, his head like whips, turns around. The others like dart up and head over there. Mark like laughs like, ha ha, and he runs the other way. He goes down the hall. Milchick's like, gee, idiot. Mark runs past Miss Huang and into Milchick's office. He's like searching through cabinets behind a desk. And she's like, you're definitely not supposed to do that. So he finds the intercom for the board. He like starts plugging it in. And then Huang radios Milchick that Mark is in his office. And he's got the speaker. So Milchick starts running. And Mark's like, hello, is anyone there? He's like, is the board on? He's like, it's Mark S. from Macro Data Refinement. There's like static. He's like, okay, well, if you're there, please listen. And it's like, is there anyone ever really there? Because we never hear anything. So he's like, listen, now I know that you want to do the right thing for severed people, which is why I need to see my team again. And he's like, Mark. And Milchick's calling from down the hall. So Mark's like, if we truly are the face of severance reform, as you say, then they deserve a chance. Mark! He's like, please, they're my friends. You can't just make them disappear. Please. Milchick like pulls a plug. And he holds it up while looking at Mark. He drops it on the desk. And he walks out. And Mark like follows. He's like, look, Mr. Milchick, I only went to the board because I cannot. And Milchick's like, the board does not converse with innies. It is clear your Audi's fame has gone to your innie's head. And Mark's like, no, my innie just wants his coworkers back so we can serve Kier together. They reach the elevator and Milchick like slides his card to like open it. And Mark's like, are you firing me? And he's like, on you go. He's like, why can't you just bring them back? Goodbye, Mark S. And he's like, wait, but the doors close and then it's black. So Mark, he seems like he's in pain or something like that. The elevators open up and then there's like a big painting across the elevator. 4 people are buried like up to their shoulders. So I think it's Kier or someone, kneeling with a sword or something in his hand. And Mark slowly steps out, looks around, the elevator sounds, and then Dylan walks out. And he's like, did it work? And Mark's like, it worked. So Dylan's like, where are the others? And he's like, I don't know. And Dylan's like, Milchick was, it's like, I didn't think I was coming back. And Mark's like, I've been back a couple days already. And Dylan's like, what? And Mark's like, yeah, they had a whole new team. Dylan's like, Cobell just replaced us? And Mark's like, no, Cobell's gone. He's like, Milchick's in charge. And then Dylan's like, okay, so the man who just tackled me and cut up my best belt is our boss now? He's like, fudge me. Mark's like, wait, he tackled you? And Dylan's like, yeah, bad. Which, I mean, fair, I tackled a man first, but I didn't fudge with his belt. And he looks at the description for the painting. It's like, Kier pardons his betrayers. So obviously it has something to do with them. Then they hear like pounding on the elevator and you're, Bert! The door opens, Irving is there. And Dylan's like, dude, are you okay? He like, slowly like steps out, walks up to Mark and he turns. He's like, Irving, what happened? And Dylan's like, the fudge? He's like, dude, what's wrong? He's like, you pour up there? So Dylan goes after him. Mark starts like following and then looking back at the elevator. And he whispers, like, come on, come on. He's obviously waiting or hoping for Helly. Nothing. He walks and then ding. He whips around. Helly rushes out. Mark like runs up to her and hugs her. He's like, oh my God, are you okay? She hugs him back. She's like, I'm okay. Did you wake up? He's like, yeah, it was crazy. And she's like, same. And he's like, God, I was so worried about you. And she's like, how long has it been? And he's like, 5 months, maybe more. Then she's like, where's everybody else? He's like, come on. And they like walk back to the workspace. So he's like, they're gone. So the other people are gone. So Dylan's by the bathroom and she's like, Irving? And Dylan's like, he won't come out. And then Mark's like, hey, Irv, the door's locked. Sorry, Mark, I just need a moment, please. And Mark's like, okay, take your time. And Dylan's like, okay, what is going on? We're not in trouble? And Mark's like, I don't think so. I mean, Milchick said our message got out. He said we're famous. And Dylan's like, all of us equally, or one of us is like the star? And Mark's like, I don't know. But then he tried to fire me, I think. And Dylan's like, why? And Mark's like, well, because I sort of sabotaged new people. And Holly's like, new people? And Dylan's like, so what the fudge happened up there? And Mark's like, well, look, Milchick is probably coming. And Dylan's like, good. I owe him a fudging belt cut. He's like, now tell me. And Mark's like, what if they're waiting for us to tell each other what happened because they don't know what happened? I mean, what if they're listening, Dylan? And Hallie's like, wait, what happened to the security camera? Irving comes out and apologizes. Dylan asks if he's okay. Then Miss Huang comes in and says hi to everyone. Says that Mr. Milchick is waiting for them in the break room. So the other three are confused to see a kid. As they walk, Dylan's like, WTF is going on? Why is she like 8? Mark's like, I don't know. So then Hallie's like, wait, so they replaced us? And Mark's like, for a couple days. And Dylan's like, who was me? And Mark's like, they weren't like specific counterparts. They were like, I don't know, weird. And Dylan's like, okay, well, I don't think you should feel bad at all. And Mark's like, feel bad? He's like, yeah, for ending their lives? I'm like, fudge them. And Mark's like, well, I wasn't trying to. And Dylan's like, no, dude, I'm saying don't feel bad. Like, I'm sure they deserved it. So Miss Huang opens the break room door, like with her card. And then it's like silence at the doors as they walk like in one by one. And they walk down the long, dark corridor to the dark door at the end. Mark opens the door. Milchick's in there smiling. Macro data refinement. Welcome back. Please take a seat. Irving, if you wouldn't mind being in the back, tall glass of water. So the room looks a little different, I think. And then Mark's like, I guess the board reconsidered my terms? And, he's still smiling. Guess so. What you're about to see will be shown to every innie who sets foot in this building after today. I hope it will give you a sense of Lumen's feelings. So the movie starts, there's like cartoon graphics, and it's like, Lumen is listening. There's like a flying Kier. So it's like that claymation, like style, like Davy and Goliath, whatever. He flies through clouds to like the Lumen building. And then there's like a face on the building, and it talks. It talks. It's Keanu Reeves talking. He's not credited, but it's his voice. So it's like, oh, hi, you probably don't remember me from this angle. I'm the Lumen Administration Building, Branch 501. You're sitting in me right now. The name's a mouthful, or as I say, doorful, so you can just call me Lumen. I've gone through a lot of changes since my siring here in 1870, but one thing I've always had is a love for my workers, both severed and unsevered. Not to brag, but my basement floor is one of the premier severed workspaces in the 206 countries from which Lumen operates. And then there's like someone like, claymation Mark or whatever. It's like, hey, no running in my halls. The worker dude like gulps. His face on the wall is like, that tickles. Irving laughs at that, but it continues. But what makes a building truly happy? This question came to light when 4 MDR workers, dissatisfied with their severed lives, conspired to mount what Lumen historians will forever call the Macrodat Uprising. So, like, the workers kind of look like them, like the claymation ones. So they're in the control room. Their arms are, like, waving around, like they have multiple, just hitting buttons and stuff like that. So, like, under my literal nose unfolded a human drama of danger and intrigue, righteous anger. Irving, like, stands on a chair, his character, whatever. Let's burn the place to the ground. And then his hair turns like into flame. So he's like, inspiration. So then Mark and the other is in the big room with like Bert's department. I forget what it was. He's like, why are we down here still working in the dark? And then the Lumen's like, and love. Elevator opens with Mark and Helly like on opposite sides of the door. And then they embrace and smooch. So the light turns like pinkish and the camera kind of pans around them. And Dylan's like, what the poop? So the Macrodat Uprising yielded bounteous reforms. Cobell and Milchick, they're behind like a construction guy with plans. And again, like claymation form. These included tasty new snacks like fruit leather, cut beans, Christmas mints, and salsa. So then the Dylan clay puppet eats some food from the vending machine and is like overjoyed. It's almost like ecstasy or whatever. And Dylan's like, what the heck? Then there's like a flying hall pass and it has wings. Not sold yet. The incentives were also reformed and now range from hall passes to pineapple bobbing to our brand new playful mirror room. And there's like a shot from like outside the building. You see like the pond outside the building. He's like, it's funny. I've sat by this reflected pool my whole life, yet it took the quiet courage of 4 MDR heroes to show me who I really am. I thank Kier for them. I thank Kier for the Macrodat Uprising. And then those words go up on the screen as it like kind of pans out. And then the lights come up. Dylan like kind of claps, like he's not sure if he should clap or whatever. Milchick stands up by the front of the screen. I know we have our differences, but I want you to know that I truly respect each and every one of you, and I don't want to be your jailer. By the end of the day, each of you will choose whether you want to remain here. Not your Audis, but you. If you start work on your file, I'll assume you want to stay. If not, I'll send you to the surface. No ill will. Maybe I'll even buy you a drink at a bistro one day. Like the rest of the severed floor, the break room has no cameras or microphones. Privacy shouldn't mean packing into a supply closet like so many sardines. I truly hope you will all choose to stay and enjoy what you have helped build. A new quarter, a fresh start for all of us. Mark nods. Milchek motions for Huang to leave. He follows. And Helly's like, what the hell was that? And Dylan's like, massive ass head game is what that was. So what the hell did you guys see up there? Mark looks around and Helly's like, he said there were no microphones in here. And Dylan's like, yeah, he says a lot of poop, so just fudging whisper it. Mark's like, okay, so I was at a party at my sister's house for Rick and Hale. And she's like, wait, what? And Dylan's like, you know Rick and Hale? And Mark's like, he's my Audie's brother-in-law, because he wrote the book. So, they must know, they must know him from other stuff, I don't know. So he's like, yeah, he's my Audie's brother-in-law. And Dylan's like, what? And Mark's like, and for some reason, we both know Cabell. And Dylan's like, that's insane. And Mark's like, yeah, well, there's something else. Just before I switched back, I found a wedding photo. Now, I guess my Audie's wife died a few years ago. And Dylan's like, oh, poop. And Mark's like, which apparently is part of why I decided to get severed, except the woman in the photo was Miss Casey. And Irving's like, Miss Casey is your wife? Is my Audie's wife. And Dylan's like, but she's dead? And Mark's like, no, I know, but it was her. Irving's like, then she's down here? And Mark's like, no, I went to wellness, it's gone. And Dylan's like, what do you mean gone? He's like, I mean, it's gone. And Helen's like, oh my God, Mark, are you okay? He's like, yeah, well, I don't know. He's like, what about you? What did you see? And Hallie's like, I saw the inside of a really fudging boring apartment. Mark's like, so you live by yourself? And she's lying. And she's like, yeah, I was watching some nature show on TV wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt. And Dylan's like, what kind of t-shirt? Did it feature like a band or pocket? It's like a pocket? What does that matter? And she's like, it was like a Save the Gorillas shirt. He's like, cool. And she's like, I guess. And Irvin's like, and then what? She's like, then I went outside and found a guy. He looked like a gardener. I told him everything. I think he thought it was BS, but he said he had his brother was a cop, and he would tell him everything. It's like, I don't know. It's like, sorry guys, I really tried. And Irving's like, a gardener? And she's like, yeah. And he's like, a night gardener? She's like, I think so. I mean, maybe he has a different job during the day. So that's the thing. It was nighttime when they did this. So then Mark's like, what about you, Irv? And he's like, do you suppose he's serious about letting us leave? And it's like kind of silent. And Hallie's like, Irv, what did you see? And he's like, it's not our world up there. That's what I saw. And Dylan's like, come on, man, you can tell us. And she's like, yeah, it's okay, even if it's bad. And he's just like silent. And then he gets up and leaves. So he walks down the hall. The others like come after him. Dylan calls out. He calls out to him. But he's like, I just want to walk for a bit. And Dylan's like, I'll walk with you. And Hallie's like, no, we should all go. And Dylan's like, let me talk him down. He's like, you go back to camp. She's like, I'll get you if I need you. And Mark's like, are you sure? So Mark and Hallie walk. And he's like, Irv's going to be okay, right? And she's like, yeah, Dylan's on it. He's like, we have to end the day. He's like, yeah. So more slow walking. And she's like, did you guys look happy in the wedding photo? Because, they kissed. So there's obviously something between these two. So she's like, did you, and she's trying to be happy and supportive, but it's like, is she jealous? How does she feel? Does she feel anything for him? So she's like, did you look happy? He's like, yeah, we did. He's like, I never, Miss Casey and I never felt that way. And she's like, okay, so what are you going to do? He's like, well, I got to get her out of here, right? I mean, if she's my wife. And she's like, right, of course. I mean, assuming she's still here. Though technically, strictly speaking, she's not your wife. I'm pretty sure your Audi bought the ring. And Mark's like, sure, except we're the same-ish person, so it's mushy. And she's like, it's mushy? Is that what it is? Mushy? Okay. He's like, yeah, listen, Helly. And she's like, we're not the same, actually. Us and the Audis, we're not. And speaking for myself, I don't think we owe them poop. But Miss Casey is, well, she's one of us. So if you want to help your Audi and find out what happened to her, I'll help. And there's like, smile. He's like, so you're staying? She's like, I think I'm staying. But what they don't know, because Milchek's not severed. Miss Cobell, I don't think, she wasn't severed, right? So who's to say Miss Casey was? But it would be weird if she wasn't severed and she's like, this is her husband and she's acting like she doesn't know him. So, but we still know if she's dead in the real world, how is she there? So Irving's still walking and Dylan's like, Irv, hold up. And he's like, leave me alone, Dylan. He's like, okay, dude, is it, you can't leave until the end of the day. And Irving's like, are you sure? I failed at the objective. And Dylan's like, what? I went to go find Bert. And Dylan's like, okay, did you see him? He's married, or at least he was with someone. I saw them through the window. And Dylan's like, poop. So Irving's like, I should be happy. He's happy. And Dylan's like, yeah, but seems like you're probably not, right? And Irving's like, the last time I was happy was when all I knew was MDR. And I was good at my job and not trying to be happy. I'm going to leave, Dylan. So they're by like the exit door. And Dylan's like, it's not leaving. So stop calling it that. Because, basically it's like, I think he's going to say, it's like, you're killing yourself. Because, if he doesn't come back, then he doesn't exist anymore. Irving's like, I know you want, I know. And Dylan's like, just fudging try. So Dylan's like blocking him so he can't go to the exit. Irv's like stops pushing, puts his hand on Dylan's shoulder. He's like, you're a good friend, Dylan. They hug and it kind of whispers. And he's like, before I went to Bert's, I woke up in my apartment. And Dylan's like, what? He says what a lot. And Irving's like, I was standing in front of some kind of easel. And Dylan's like, fudge, there's easels up there? And Irving's like, yeah, my Audi was working on a painting of a hallway, a black hallway. And Dylan's like the break room one? He's like, no, it was different, darker. There was an elevator at the end with a downward arrow. So that's probably like where Miss Casey goes, right? But we don't know that. We need to find this out. So he's like, he painted dozens of them. And Dylan's like, fudge, why? And Irving's like, I don't know. And I wanted you to know before I left. He's like, okay, well, you're not. You know. So more struggling. And Dylan's like, stop it. He's like, listen to me. Look, I'm sorry that Audi Bert has a hot husband or whatever. But, he's not the point. Any Bert is the guy you fell for. And I know because I encouraged the courtship. And Irving's like, I want it to be over. And Dylan's like, okay, so then after you find a black hallway and Irving's like, I want the pain to be over. If he's gone and I'm gone. And Dylan's like, stop saying that. Irving's like, then somehow we'll be together. Dylan's like, he wouldn't want that. And Irving's like, how do you know? And Dylan's like, because I don't want that, because I would be sad and I would be less productive. And I'm really good at what I do here, whatever it is. And if you're a part of what makes me good at it, so please do not go. Dylan, I'm your favorite perk. He like shakes his head. He's like, don't bring them into this. Like, all I'm saying is if Bert was still here, he would be telling you to stick around and figure out what the fudge this is. And then from behind him, Dylan G., Mr. Milchek would like to see you. It's Miss Huang. So Dylan follows her. Irv stands by the door. So does he go out the door? Can he go out the door? Milchek stands in front of his computer. He's, while on the phone. The screen says, hello, Miss Cobell. So it's just like the letters go on there, kind of like change, move about or whatever. And so he's on the phone. He's like, I know, but they said it would be corrected by now. It should be Mr. Milchek. M-R period space M-I-L-C-H-I-C-K. Well, I sympathize, but... And Miss Huang opens the door and he holds out his finger. But could you please see that it's taken care of? Yes, thank you. And then he hangs up, and then to Miss Huang, he's like, if someone calls about my welcome screen, I need you to put that call through immediately. And she's like, yes, sir. Dylan walks in. You wanted to see me? He's like, I did. Thank you, Miss Huang. So she leaves. He's like, so you going to apologize about the belt? And he just looks at him. He probably has like, what are you talking about? He's like, your wife's name is Gretchen. And Dylan's like, what? What? That's all he says. She wanted you to know. Come with me. They go through this other door in his office, like off to the side. There's this dark hallway. And I do apologize, Dylan, for not being a better listener, for not hearing your needs. She's like, take a look. Shows him some like blueprints. And it says like Audi Family Visitation Suite. These are blueprints for a new renovation of which I chose not to inform your colleagues. Are you saying I could see my family here? If you take the name of the room at face value, I'd say yes. And Dylan's like, holy fudge, the holiest. Sadly, everyone else in your department is single. As such, I'm asking that you keep this between us, only to avoid resentment. I'd hate for your friends to turn against you after all you've done for them. So Dylan walks out of the office past Miss Huang. She's working at a computer. She looks at Milchek when he approaches the door, but then he just like shuts it without saying a word to her. So it's kind of rude. She opens her desk drawer and pulls out this like old water game, you know, like you know what I'm talking about. In his office, Milchek stares at his computer screen and says, "Hello, Miss Cobell." And that, again, that's the name of the episode. So the game that Huang has, it's like this guy standing with both hands like together, like above his head, kind of pointing up. So it's like, you know, you push the button, the rings float up, and it has to like go onto his hand. And he also has like an old-timey bathing suit. I don't know if it's supposed to be Kier because he has a beard, but I don't know. So Milchek finally turns off his computer. Helly turns her computer on. So she's standing at her workstation when Mark comes in. He like smiles and nods. Dylan walks in. Mark's like, you okay? He's like, I'm okay. Mark's like, where's Irv? And you hear, right here. So Dylan's like, Irv, you okay? I'm okay. And then God walked down by the allergies place. They all sit at their computers. Dylan questions this face thing from the previous worker. You know, he's like what's this? Like the display thing. What, you know? I think it was one of the perks, or whatever. So he's just like slides into file cabinet to get rid of it. Mark looks at the numbers on a screen. He moves things about. He captures a bunch of bad numbers or whatever they are. There's like a flicker of Miss Casey's face on the screen. And he just keeps working. And that's the end of the episode. So that is the end of the first episode. So episode 2 and 3 are out. So I need to get caught up. Yeah, so I will try to get caught up, maybe double up at some point. We'll see how it goes. But man, but see, part of me, I don't want to double up. I don't want to I want this to last as long as possible. We'll see. All right, new show, Prime Target. It's good. Season 1, episode 1. I talked about it at the beginning, so I feel like I should say more about it now. But so you know, it starts Lee. Well, what's his name? Lee Woodall, who you may or may not know him from something. So it starts off in Baghdad, Baghdad, Iraq. There's this mother and daughter. The daughter wants an ice cream, so they go to the store. But then the mother realizes she doesn't have any money on her. The store dude's like, "Oh no, it's on me," because he's like, "Oh, my favorite customers." But she's like, no. She like insists on paying. So she tells Amira, her daughter, she's like, stay here. She's like, I'll be right back. She goes like across the street, goes to ATM, and then all of a sudden, there's an explosion like right next to the ATM. People get like thrown or burned or pinned, just like that. Mother, she gets up. She looks for her daughter. She goes back to the ice cream store. The daughter is with the store owner, like at the back of the store, and there's like sparks from like electrical stuff and like timbers falling or anything like that. So she screams, she's like, come to me, come to me. The ground's like unsteady and everything. So the girl like reaches, and it's like, okay, put a little more effort. I mean, I don't know if she's dazed or anything like that, but she's like not reaching, and then all of a sudden, the floor, the ground just falls between. They both go down. So it's like, holy crap. Then Cambridge, England. We see Edward Brooks, so that's our main character, and he's on a rowing team. After after locker room or whatever, he's like doing his math calculations. The other guys want to go to like this bar or something like that. And then it's interesting. As he goes to his room or something like that, there's like this spiral staircase. So I'm sure it's supposed to be like the Fibonacci number, right, sequence. He has his friend Fiona. She like walks into his apartment. She's like, "Oh, it was open," and he was like in the shower or whatever. She's like, "I made you some carbs." And he's like, well, I only have a few minutes. And she's like, but you're wasting away. He's not that thin, whatever. But he's like, well, I have to get ready. And she's like, well, what are you doing later? And he's like, well, I have to work. And she's like, oh, of course. All mathematics do their best work before they're 29. And he's like, it's just some stuff that I need to figure out for my work. He's like, nights are quieter. And she's like, well, it's just a few drinks at a college bar. And he's like, well, yeah, it's your birthday. And then he's like, how old? And she's like, 23. He's like, prime number. Because that's what the show is about. And she's like, yeah, because I would assume most people know about prime numbers. So then he goes to a lecture. He does more calculations, in his little notebook. Professor says that they're no longer in the top of the class, and it's like this big. It's not really a lecture. He's just like addressing the student body or something like that. So he's like, they're no longer at the top of the class. Oxford, Stanford, MIT, they're making serious advances in academic research. So the headmaster asks him to speak to them, they're talented postgraduates, to remind them that it was in this city that Sir Isaac Newton started a revolution in mathematics. Darwin expounded his vision in natural selection, et cetera, whatever. And then Brooke mutters, and Oppenheimer found a way to blow it all to poop. So the teacher heard him. He's like, oh, do you have something to share? He doesn't say anything. So he continues, there are answers in all of life's mysteries. If they have a purpose, it's to find them. And he tells them this is their time to make a dent in the universe. So then we see this older dude. He must be a professor. He's listening to classical music. It kind of looks like he's in an office or a library. Brooks walks in and he's like, 204. He's like, the number of the bus that I passed on my way here. And he's like, interesting number, 204. And then the professor's like, square it, and it is the sum of 3 consecutive cubes. So the professor, and he knew this right away. So the professor asks how that other professor is doing. And Brooks like, oh, he worries more about league tables than anything else. And the professor that he went to visit, he's like, well, it is important. He's like, reputation means funding. So he tells Edward, he's like, the guy is brilliant and worthy of you. Edward is like, I want to ask if we can still work. And he's like, no. Edward's like, if you'll make an exception, don't. He's like, there's something I want to concentrate on for my research, and I know they'll never let me, but Edward. He's like, but with you, no one would even know. He's like, I can't. And he's like, give him a chance. I'm asking it of you. So there's silence. Professor grabs a spoon for his tea, and he just looks at it, and then Edward takes it and then pours him a cup. So it's like, okay, there's something with this professor. So Edward wants to do this research, wants to work with him, but he's like, he can't. And then Edward's like, we both know even on your worst day, you're better than any of the others. So we'll find out the specifics later. So Edward goes to the other professor's office, and the guy's like, well, just someone with your reputation, integral analysis seems a bit easy. Then Edward's like, 204. He's like, it's a fascinating number. And he's like, Ed, look. Edward's like, what? You don't find it fascinating? Professor's like, you don't have to do this. So he gets up, goes to the chalkboard, and he's like, there's a pattern concealed inside of it. See if you can spot it. He's like, Ed? He's like, take as long as you need. And the professor's like, we're here to talk about your research. And Edward's like, and you hated it, so we've moved on. Come on, 204. How can you resist? So the professor's like, everyone tells me you're brilliant. I know you're brilliant. I have a 3-page paper from that professor guy. And he's like, this is a supervision. It is not a prize fight. How is he, by the way? And Edward's like, well, he has Alzheimer's, so. And the professor's like, he taught me here as well, So I have an idea how close you two would have been. And he gets up, goes to the chalkboard, writes an exponent of 2 after 204, so 204 squared. And he writes equals 23 cubed plus 24 cubed plus 25 cubed. And that's true. So if you figure it out, it turns out to be 41,616. And Edward has nothing to say because he was right, and he thought he could trick him, but he knew about it. But what's interesting is there's a hidden camera, like in a smoke detector or something like that, and you see the screen. It's like live feed, and it's someone screenshots, and then you see cameras like other college offices, like Athens, Zurich, Vienna, St. Petersburg. So someone is watching has cameras in all these college offices, which is just weird. And why would they screenshot it at that moment? So then there's this woman at a computer in Cambridge. She looks at a video going through this underground room. So it's a place where the mother and daughter fell. So there's this cavern or something, this chamber underground in Baghdad. So she calls someone. She's like, you won't believe what I'm seeing. So then this woman and she's giving a tour in a class at a museum. She talks about, most valuable resource 1,000 years ago was knowledge. So this guy comes in smiling, and then she talks to him later. She says she got an email from a colleague in Iraq. There was a gas explosion, and they found an underground chamber. 9th century, looks almost untouched, which is like crazy. It's like, how could you not know it's there? But whatever. And she's been asked to fly out there by the Baghdad Department of Culture and Antiquities. They want her to consult. She thinks that there could be like a name on the wall. It's like one dude or whatever, some famous dude or something like that. So it turns out this lady, she's married to that math professor dude that Edward doesn't really like. And he talks about how Edward doesn't think he's capable. He knows that Edward is brilliant, but sometimes he just wants to punch him in the face. So Edward's at this pub for Fiona's birthday, and he's not digging the scene. He's at the bar. This girl comes up to him, and she's like, "What are you reading?" And he's like, "Maths." And she's like, "Okay, now you ask me what I'm reading." So he does, and he ends up kind of insulting or whatever. The bartender too. I think when you look at it, it's like, okay, he's hitting on him, right? He is, because he's up, whatever. And then they go up to the roof, and they're like looking out. He's like starlings, so you see these birds flying. And Edward's like, numbers are everywhere. And the starlings, there's a sequence to their movement. I keep watching, but I haven't, And then he's like, nature might feel random, but I'm trying to find a pattern to it. So that's like the point of what he's trying to do. So then at his place, he's sitting at a desk. The bartender's like sleeping in his bed, so they hooked up. The bartender then gets up, and he's just wearing like his boxer briefs. And Edward had gone in the other room, so the bartender is like looking through his papers and that. And Edward comes back from the other room. He's like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Oh, I was just looking." He's like, "Well, don't. It's private." So the bartender's like, it's all ones and zeros. And he's like, "Don't you use a computer?" And Edward's like, "They're not fast enough." And he's like, "You should go." And he's like, "Well," and he's like, "I mean it. I have to work." And the bartender's like, I'm sorry." And Edward's like, "It's fine." He's like, "I got family coming." And the bartender's like, "Let me guess. They don't know that you're gay, do they?" And Edward's like, "I'm not anything." He's like, "Can you go?" So it's like he's just no emotions. He's just like, that's just not how his brain works. So he's not gay. He's just like whatever. He just hooked up with someone. It didn't matter. And that's it's interesting. Not that's how I am, but I just find that an interesting outlook. And then he's just like writing the bartender gathers. I mean, it's a little harsh. I have to say that. But the bartender just gathers the stuff and just like silently leaves. So then someone visits him, and I'm not sure if it was his brother, because I thought it was his brother, because there's some kids, they're on the grass, and he's like, they're really not supposed to be playing on the grass, because you're not supposed to be on the grass. And then he when he says it again, the guy kind of snaps, and he's like, but then he's like, "This place means a lot to you, huh?" And then he's like, "She'd have been proud of you, your mom." So because he says your mom, it's like not our mom. So unless they're half brothers, maybe they had the same dad. I don't know who this guy was. But then someone comes and yells at the boy to get off the grass. So then the guy, I'm assuming it's his wife, and the kids leave. And they just kind of like wave to Edward. So it's like, was that all there was to the visit? So then that professor dude is cooking. His wife asks if he's nervous, because she had told him that he should invite Edward over. And he's like, no. But she's like, "No, you should, to kind of, smooth things over, make a connection, whatever." So he mentions how, brilliant Edward is. So he comes over. Andrea, that's her name. She opens the door. And while they're eating and drinking, she says that, they were undergraduates when they first met. And then they, got together later. She asks about him, and Edward says that he finds it hard to make time. And she says, "Yeah, work is important." And she says, "So what is it, the work?" And she's like, "Don't worry, I'll try to keep up." And Edward's like, "It's actually about one simple question. What if the rules were different? What if numbers didn't behave the way we assumed?" So then the professor's like, "So not integral analysis then?" And she's like, "But aren't numbers just like the mountains or atoms?" And he writes, numbers and asks, what's missing. So he wrote 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. ... So the professor smiles. Andrea thinks it over. And Edward's like, 3rd century BC, the Romans had no symbol for 0. It didn't exist. And then the professor's like, took another 1,000 years for an Arab mathematician to describe it. And Edward's like, numbers are out there just waiting to be found, like vast hidden continents. So Andrea's like, so you're an explorer. And then she's like, can I show you something? Yeah. And he's like, yeah. So she's like, it's a dig I'm going to join, a site in Baghdad. There was a gas explosion, artifacts from the Abbasid or something like that period were found in a chamber underground. It's like, I think it may be Bat al-Hikmah or something like that. It's like the House of Wisdom. It was buried after the siege of Baghdad, like almost for like 900 years. So she hands him copies of the photos. And he's like, well, Arabs created trigonometry and algebra, the concept of negative numbers, a golden age at. And he's like, this one, what's this? So she's like, the dome ceiling from inside the chamber. He's like, those are number patterns. And she's like, what? So he starts like writing, and he's like, this, it's not big enough. He's like, is this tablecloth valuable? And she's like, go ahead. So he starts writing on the tablecloth. He's writing, and he's like, these markings, there's a pattern here. There's a pattern in these symbols. He's like, the picture isn't very distinct. He's like, do you have others? And she's like, no, just these. So he's writing again. He's like, I need more. He's like, this is enough. He's like, I should go. Do you mind if? And she's like, go. So I think he starts to take the tablecloth, but the professor's like leave it. So Edward leaves or something like that. And then she's like, I can see why he's got under your skin. It's like the passion. He's like the purity of it. And then she's like, he's very like her. So like who? His mom? Is there more to it? I don't know. The professor takes like the tablecloth like in a huff and like leaves the room. So the professor bikes to his office. He starts like writing or copying down some stuff from the tablecloth. He's being watched. There's a camera. There's like a second camera apparently. Because it's like one right like over his desk. The other was like pointing away unless the camera can move. I don't know. So Edward gets to his place. He starts writing. The professor in his office, he puts his pen down, and a person watching like rewinds and then like cuts a clip out and then puts a comment, algebraic workings 2139. So Edward's eating in the cafeteria. The bartender, he's there. He's like in uniform, so I guess he works there too. And Edward's like, hey, he's like, do you want to sit down or something? And the bartender's like, you asked me to join you? And he's like, yeah. And the bartender's like, well, I'm at work. So he takes plates and stuff and he like walks away. And Edward kind of yells out, he's like, I think I messed up the other night. He's like, I can't stop thinking about it. And then another professor, Stephen Ray, he comes in, he greets the regular professor. I think his name is James, I don't remember. So he calls to Edward for a moment, for a moment of time. So they go out and they say that what he showed him was a half-baked smoke screen. He's like, so now look, he's like, I'm on your side. So inside they look at papers and he's like, prime numbers? And Edward nods. And he's like, what, do you want to write code on Facebook? And he's like, no, I'm interested in theory, not all the applied stuff. So the professor's like, okay. So the professor sits. And Edward's like, Newton was full of poop. And the professor's like, oh, well, that's a catchy title. And Edward's like, I'm serious. It's like, the world lives in his shadow, but he was blind to nature. He saw the apple fall, but he thought only of gravity. He didn't think to look any further. He's like, look how many seed chambers are in an apple. Because there's like a dried apple slice or something on the desk. He's like, 5, prime. How many petals on any flower? He's like, I'm talking statistically. Typically 3, 5, or 13, all prime. Why? How many chromosomes in a human body? And the professor's like, okay. He's like, then Edward's like, 23. How many seasons elapse before insects typically swarm? And the professor's like, just hang on a second. And Edward's like, 17. It's like, the human race has built our whole society based on non-primes because it makes us feel more in control. 60 seconds in a minute, 24 hours in a day, but we're not in control. Good people die, bad people prosper. The planet is a heartbeat from a catastrophe, and our only response is to make more rules to impose on the universe. So the professor's like, so you're looking for sequences in primes? And Edward's like, a small constellation of primes, yes. What if the structure we need is the one hidden within the fabric of the universe? What if God's cipher exists here on Earth? The DNA of existence is actually prime numbers. And he puts down like one of the dig photos. He's like, now I think this is some sort of prime formula. I do. It's the same research as mine, just 9 centuries apart. So what do you think? He's like, will they go for it? And Professor's like, I'm sorry, Ed. He's like, I can't put this in front of the board. And he's like, why not? Look, I know it's not orthodox, which is why I kept it to myself. But he's like, not orthodox. It's a unicorn. He's like, I'm sorry, but he's like, listen to what you're saying. He's like, God's cipher, DNA it. He's like, come on. I'll end this for that tinfoil hat mob. He's like, someone with your talent, it's not worthy of you. And Edward's like, not worthy? And the professor's like, no, I know you think I'm unfit to judge you, but he's like, I get that, but you shouldn't waste your time on this. I have seen others waste theirs. And Edward's like, what? What do you mean? What others? So did he mean other people were working on this idea? But then the professor's like, it doesn't matter. He's like, I shouldn't have said that. It's just that you need to drop this. You need to drop this now. So then he leaves, and we see like other stuff around the room, and there's like spirals and waves and stuff. So the professor goes home, but then he like kind of like whips around, like some birds fly up, and he goes inside. So like something kind of spooked him. He plugs something into his computer. There's like locked files like open or something like that, and there's like messages to the keeper at the keeper world. So there's like encrypted message, and so he gets, it's like, why are you working on prime numbers again? We had an agreement. So then the next day, Edward searches like prime numbers at the school library. He looks up like formulas for prime numbers. There's like a book on file or something like that. He clicks it, and it says removed from records. And then all the others, I don't know if the other ones just changed or if it's updating, but it's like removed from records. So all these books about primes are gone. So Andrea walks in the house. She calls out asking, what he wants to do about dinner. And then she sees like a big like barrel, like metal barrel, like out back with like flames coming out. So she calls out and maybe the guy's name was Robert. Was it Robert? James? Robert? I don't know. So she goes out to fire, and she sees like the tablecloth in there. So he enters his room. Someone's been there. They broke into his desk. They took all his notes. He rushes down to like the security desk or whatever. He says someone's been in his room, and the guy's like, yeah. He said he'd left some vital papers in there. And Edward's like, who? So then the guy's like, Professor Mallinger. He's like, it was me who let him in, sir. So then he goes to the office, and he knocks like loudly on the door. He knocks again. He knocks the third time, leaves. And he goes to use the phone. Someone picks it up. And he's like, why'd you do it? And he's like, Ed? He's like, my research. Why'd you do it? He's like, Ed, listen. He's like, you told me I had to stop. You told me not to waste my time. And he's like, no, look. He's like, you stole it. He's like, don't touch it again, and don't go near it. We'll talk about this later. And he hangs up on Edward. So Edward's biking. Andrea listens to a message from her husband saying that he's leaving. Goodbyes are hard. He's like, sorry. And then Edward knocks on the door. He's like, he in? And she's like, no, he left a message. So she tells him to come in, and she plays it. This has to end. I'm trying to say goodbye, but it's not easy. I'm so sorry that I couldn't give you more. Just try to be happy. It wasn't ever anything that you did. And then paramedics like find his car, and there's like a camera pointed at it. So I think he's dead inside. So was it because he was working on Prime, someone killed him? And then all these files are removed from the library, and then someone burnt the tablecloth? Did he do that, or did someone go there and take it? And then someone broke in, or no, the professor must have gone into the office to get the files. So maybe someone forced him to do that. Or maybe he's trying to protect Edward. I don't know. But I'm assuming someone killed him. He didn't kill himself, because that doesn't make any sense. So that's where the first episode ends. And it's just like, what does that mean? So right now, you can watch the second episode, and I think new episodes are Wednesday. We could potentially be like a week behind unless I can catch up on that. So, and here I thought, it's like, there's no TV, and now I'm behind on shows. I may continue it. I again, because of the math. I'm not a super math nerd. I tell my kids this all the time. It's like, I promise you, I don't sit and do math calculations, at home. I don't have a whiteboard in my kitchen or anything like that. But I think I can appreciate. I understand a lot, not everything. I'm not like a uber math genius like Edward here, but I can appreciate it, and it works, and it sometimes I've been going to this class like every couple of months or whatever, and there's other math teachers from like the county, And sometimes we get into this. I hate doing group work and stuff like that. But when we start doing these things, it actually starts getting interesting. And after I'm like, who am I? Who is this person that is talking to these other guys and other guys, other teachers, male and female? Who is this person nerding out? It's me. So that is a prime target. Okay, and now the movie feature is Presence. So, like I said at the beginning, according to Wikipedia, it's a supernatural thriller drama. Okay, I really thought this was a neat movie. I don't think it's not going to be like my favorite movie of the year. I don't think, but I thought it was really kind of interesting, and it wasn't what I thought. You know me, I love horror movies. I love suspense. I love that stuff. I don't like the overly like the forced jump scares, because sometimes you can see them coming and it's like, okay, here it is. Yep, there it was. And sometimes, when they actually do work, they feel a little cheap, even if they are successful. This isn't like that. There's no like jump scares like that. They're not trying to scare you. So I think that's a really cool approach, because you're telling, in a sense, a haunted house story, like a ghost story, a present, whatever. But you're not trying to build up to suspense, like, oh, it's scary, what's going to happen, and all this. Now, the movie was directed by Steven Soderbergh, and I'm thinking about this. It's like, I don't think I've seen a whole lot of Steven Soderbergh movies, and maybe that's just because, whatever, I'm not cultured enough or whatever. So he did like Sex, Lies, and Videotape. I never saw it, and that's supposed to be like a really good movie, right? I've never seen that. I'm trying to see like what else he did. He did Ocean's 11. Okay, obviously I saw that. He did Ocean's 12. Okay, I knew it was Solaris. Did I see that? Produced by James Cameron, George Clooney. I don't know if I saw that. Maybe that sounds familiar. Ocean's 13, Contagion. Okay. Jude Law, Kate Winslet. Okay, I'm pretty sure I saw that. Lucky Logan. I don't know if did I see that? Okay, this isn't really interesting hearing. Did I see this? Wait, he did Magic Mike's Last Dance. Did he do the other Magic Mike? He did Magic Mike. Okay, so I have seen some of his stuff. Okay, so you know who he is. I know who he is now. and now this movie, I'm always interested in the budget. It has a $2 million budget, but apparently the movie played at the 2024 Sundance Film Festival, January 19th, 2024, and then Neon, the production company, right? Is that what you would call them? They acquired the distribution rights for $5 million. So that's something that isn't always known. I think, from what little knowledge I know, I think sometimes the studio will develop it. So I don't know, when you have a movie's budget, does that include the distribution rights, or is that a whole separate thing? So like when Warner Brothers is putting out a movie, they're like, okay, yeah, we're going to do it. Or let's use Deadpool and Wolverine. So Disney, they're like, we're going to make a Deadpool movie. They don't have to pay to, they're developing it. So they are going to release it. They don't have to pay for the rights for that. So I don't know if that's just rare instances where, this was like a independent movie, or maybe if that was the $5 million, maybe it's like, okay, the movie cost $2 million to make, give us $2 million to pay for that, plus an extra $3 million, and then on top of, I don't know. But so that's interesting that it's the budget was $2 million. And I don't know, let's see, I don't have any box office predictions, I don't think. I think it made $385,000 from Thursday night shows. It's not going to be a huge, like, blockbuster or anything like that. But with that $2 million budget, that's a good thing, because, that's really small. Now, with that, it's $2 million because it's mainly in this house. You don't really see outside the house that often, and stuff goes on. You hear about like the school and the work and stuff like that. But it's because there's a presence in the house. It focuses on the house, so that makes perfect sense. And there's I talked about in the news. I meant to mention this. So with like the Captain America, the 350 million, 180 million. I'm assuming some of that goes into like CGI Red Hulk. Making CGI stuff apparently costs a lot of money to process it or whatever. So something like this, there wasn't a whole lot of. There's not really a whole. So 2 million, okay, and that pay to actors and everything. So that's really interesting. Now let's go to Rotten Tomatoes first. I know I do things out of order, and I always find this interesting too to see. Oh, actually, I'll come back to this. So Rotten Tomatoes, it's at an 87% from the critics. Wow, 54% from audience. Man, they're being a little picky on this one, I think. Okay, so critics review. Technically edited, shot, and acted. Presence is smart, minimalist, contemporary, unironic, and scary as hell. I don't know if I'd say scary. So that was ARP movies for grown-ups. NPR, Soderbergh's camera movements are so delicate. I love the camera stuff. So I mentioned that in my Twitter review. Camera movements are so delicate and expressive. He can convey empathy with a mere twitch or shudder, or rage with a sudden violent lurch. Okay. Presence, this is New York Times. Presence, another ideal trap the trip for a filmmaker who enjoys challenges and changing it artistically as much as Soderbergh does. I'll see says, as a ghost story, it's top notch. And then, here's one. Chicago Daily Herald. Hey, it's a ghost movie and one that might make Chekhov turn over in his grave. What? They gave it a 2 out of 4. I don't even know what that means. And then Sci-Fi Now. Strong performances from a small cast and the haunting visuals make Presence a genuinely unsettling and tragic ghost story. Wait, here's one. These are the audience now. Horrible. How did Rotten Tomato give this an 87? Okay, this is a thing that drives me nuts. I'm so off topic now. Rotten Tomatoes does not give out scores. It is, what do you call it? It's an aggregate. It's all the scores for the different critics. So people are just ridiculous when they're thinking Rotten, because a lot of times you'll see, how much did Rotten Tomatoes get paid for this? They're not getting paid anything. They're not giving out the reviews. They are taking all the reviews and then they compile them together. So it's just, okay, you're a genius. Okay, you get the idea. I'm not going to go over that. What I want to say, one of the things I found interesting, so if you've listened to me talk about movies before, one of the things for me is this 90-minute mark. This is the 90-minute magic number. These days, it feels like movies tend to be 2 hours, two to like 2.5 hours-ish. Sometimes they go a little longer. Very rarely 3 hours. So it's usually, between 2 and 2.5 hours, or maybe even like 2 hours, somewhere around there. 90 minutes, that's like the comedy movies. Your Adam Sandler movies or whatever, which I don't want to talk about Adam Sandler movies. Your typical regular, and nothing wrong with comedy. I like to laugh. So comedy is usually like 90 minutes. Now, what I found, or what I felt, I should say, because it's not like I did research or anything like this, but I feel like when a movie dips below 90 minutes, it kind of loses a little something for me. It's like, okay, how come your movie isn't even an hour and a half? It's like, do you not have enough story? Do you not have enough, what happened? Because 90 minutes, it seems like that should be the minimum. It used to be that was, the norm was 90 minutes. So you're making a movie for under 90 minutes. And one of the movies I think about, which is a good counterexample to my argument, was that movie Crawl, about the alligators and the flood. That one I think was like 88 minutes or something like that, or maybe even shorter, I don't remember. And that was a decent movie for what it was. It worked. And I look at like the DC animated movies, they were always like 70 something minutes. And that was like something that they had to do, that they were like limited to studios, like, okay, you have to make this It can't be more than 80 minutes or whatever. And, whatever different reasons. For me, when it's like under 90 minutes, I'm like, someone didn't have enough film in the camera to make a longer movie. It's silly. It's ridiculous. There's no ground in this. This movie is an hour and 25 minutes. Thankfully, I watched it at my regular theater and not the other theater that has 20 minutes of previews, because that would have made this a lot longer. An hour and 25 minutes, I'm like, oh man, so it's going to be like zip, like in and out. The movie's going to be done. As I'm watching the movie, and I mean this in a good way, it felt longer than an hour and 25 minutes. So I'm not saying it dragged on, but it felt like there was more. And I think maybe, I don't know if this is, I thought about this the next morning, where like in between scenes, and again, all of this is like taking place in the house, where like maybe they're in the kitchen and then the scene's over, then it kind of like goes black, and then you got the next scene. And the next scene could be like hours later, it could be the next day, it could be something else. So there's like a passing of time. And I don't know if that, and it's just like a split side, like maybe like a second or something like that, it just goes black, and then next scene, blah, 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 black, and then next scene. So I don't know if that kind of made it feel like it stretched out a little more, but as I'm watching this, I'm like, maybe the listing, the whatever I saw on IMDb or whatever, maybe if they were wrong, maybe it's actually longer than an hour and 25 minutes. Because I'm thinking about it. It's like, what time am I going to get home? Because I want to try to watch whatever stuff for the podcast. I'll read comics and I was like, well, I could just look at my phone. I didn't want to look at my phone because I'm in a movie theater. But I find that really fascinating that for an hour and a half, it felt longer. And that's a good thing, because it means I was like involved in the story. I was interested. And so anyways, what about the story? This is the tricky part without giving too much away. So Lucy Liu is the mom. And she's like very business. There's what I find about this is, because we're just limited in the house, like we don't know the outer stories, and we're getting like little snippets of different things. So she clearly has this like big career. She's doing something, and you got Lucy Liu, you got her husband, and then there's two kids. There's the brother Tyler, who's like, I think he's like a really good swimmer, and then you got Chloe, the younger daughter, and she's going through something, which is kind of like why they're moving. So what had happened is like one of her friends is died or killed herself or something like that, and so it was like really traumatic for her. I mean, you can imagine that. And so they moved to this house. Now the interesting thing is, when they go, and it's an amazing house, and it's like I don't know how the square footage, how big it is. You go in, you got the front room, you got like the dining room to the left, and there's a kitchen like right next to it. To the right, there's like this big, I don't know if it's a living room or whatever. You got these big, massive stairs, right from the door, and they like kind of twist. And then upstairs, I guess like right off the stairs must have been the master bedroom, and then just like next to that was probably the brother's room. Then this other like hallway to the right was where the daughter's room, and it almost felt like there's more. She picks out that room, I guess, just randomly. And this is where the camera work comes in. And I don't think this is a spoiler or whatever, because obviously there's a presence. There's something here. And it's interesting how it happens, because, we're in the room, whatever, she's, in there doing whatever, unpacking or something like that. And then all of a sudden the camera starts moving a certain way. And then that's where it's like, wait, it's not just a camera moving. This is the presence's perspective. And it's kind of like moving closer, moving back. And a lot of times it kind of sits in her closet. So as you're watching this movie, it's like, okay, what happened? Because, so the question is, because her friend is dead, did the presence follow them? Can they do that? I always thought it was like they were attached to the location. So did something happen in that house? Because the realtor didn't disclose anything. They didn't say like, oh, someone committed suicide or someone was killed. There's none of that. And it's just weird that this presence keeps like backing up, possibly, into the closet. So like, what's up with that closet? Why does it keep going there? Because again, did something happen in that room, or is it in that room because that's where Chloe, the daughter, is? So you're not really sure about that. But it's really cool, again, how just the camera works. And like the one reviewer says, just the way it kind of moves a little bit, and you just really get a sense for that. And I could see how some people probably aren't going to dig that so much, but I thought it was just kind of neat to really just give it more of a feel. So you're like, okay, I'm looking at it from their perspective, because we've seen that before. We've had it, but it's I feel like it hasn't quite been used this way. So it's kind of neat. Now, the interesting and kind of disturbing thing away, and this is where it kind of feels like almost like more realistic. So you got the son, who's a good swimmer, and the Lucy Liu, she really wanted this house, and they barely, like the realtor, it wasn't even like listed on the market yet, and she wants to bid on it right away, and the husband's like, well, they haven't even looked upstairs and seen the whole house. She's like, because it's in the school district, and I don't know if this is the same school they went to before, maybe, because it's not really clear why are they moving. Why do they have to get out of their other house, and what does it have to do, with Chloe and her friend? What's interesting is I read something about the ending, and it's not something that I really thought about, and I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to spoil that. But anyways, so the disturbing thing about this is, so Lucy Liu, like I said, she's really into her business, but she's doing some stuff, some questionable stuff with her job, like legal wise. And, so there's a lot going on there. She's totally into the son, so it's disturbing that, she's clearly favoring him. And because she's like, I've never been as happy as when until I had you, or something like that. And I think he even says well, what about Chloe, or something like that. And so it's so obvious how she's favoring him. And it's it just seems weird. And there's another point where he's talking about how they kind of bullied this girl, kind of shamed this girl or whatever, and played a prank on her or something like that. And she's she's like, oh, that you shouldn't do that and everything. But she's really into it. And then the dad and Chloe are like, what are you doing? And yes, and then he goes off on Chloe at one point, because her friend had died. There was two girls that died, and whether did they know each other or what, you don't really know. But it's they apparently died in their sleep, and he's like, oh, they're probably on drugs or whatever. He's just he's such an a-hole. It's wow. And what's interesting, I think that makes it a little more realistic, because he's just very arrogant. He's a good swimmer. His mom coddles or whatever, is worships him practically. So he's just super arrogant, whatever, and he's just such a jerk. And and he's just oh, she's you're not going to ruin this with your stuff or whatever. And it's just oh. Then another thing that happens, it makes the movie a little unsettling, is there's this guy at the school that Tyler likes. His name is Ryan, and he comes over, and then he meets Chloe, and so you can see he likes Chloe. And at one point he comes over another time when Tyler's not there, and they're talking and stuff like that, and he basically puts it. He talks about how he can't do anything. He's always told what to do and everything like that. But then he's basically trying to say, because they like each other, and then he's trying to say, with us, you're in control. It's whatever you want to do, whatever you're comfortable with. And he's doing this, and it's obviously, it's so obvious. He's just feeding her this line, trying to make it basically trying to manipulate her into coaxing her and pushing her, making her think that she's deciding all this stuff. And meanwhile, while this is happening, the presence is in the room, but this guy, man, he's just, So yeah, I can't really go further into detail without spoiling what happens. But then eventually, what I will say is she begins to suspect that, or she knows that there's something in there, because there's a bathroom in her room, which is amazing. And she comes out of the shower, and she notices some stuff has been moved, and she kind of freaks out. she kind of lets out a little scream, and her dad's like was nearby. He's like, "What is it?" And she's like, "Oh no, I thought I saw a mouse or something like that." He's like, "Oh great," but she figured out that there's something there. She just gets this sense. She can feel it, and it may be because of her just being so traumatic. Maybe that's why. She had losing a friend. So she's a little more sensitive to it. They say that it opens up the doorways and stuff. I find it just really interesting, and it's like, where is this going? What does this mean? And what is she going to do about it? And what is this presence? Because the other thing is also, it's like, you're not. Sometimes they say you're not supposed to be too welcoming to other spirits or something like that. And it may seem like a kind spirit. Is it a kind spirit? Because why are spirits there? Is it because they have something to do, and are they angry because they're stuck there? So there's like so much, and it's like you don't want to piss off the spirits or presences or whatever. So I find like the whole thing was interesting, and it wasn't like a super duper heavy, like thick plot or convoluted or anything like that. So it's just pretty like straightforward, and it's just kind of interesting, and like where are they taking this? So what are they gonna do? So I found it really, really cool, and I'm glad I saw this movie. I'm glad I saw the trailer. So thank, I guess, the other theater for their 20-minute plus of trailers. Otherwise, I may not have heard of this movie. I just thought it was pretty cool. Again, that's not going to change the face of cinema or anything like that. But I think it was really cool. And again, for just like under 90 minutes, I think they nailed it. They told the story that they wanted to tell, and that's all it took. The thing is, the ending though, yeah, I'm not going to say anything more. So that is it. So you should check it out. It's worth seeing. Do you need to see it on a big screen? Not necessarily, but I think having the bigger screen, bigger vision, just you can get a better sense for the house and the perspective of the spirit. I don't know if I'm trying to think now, because I thought it said that the entire movie is from the perspective of the spirit or the presence. I wonder if that's the case. I mean, it could be. Or is the presence always in? No, because the presence isn't always just in her room. So maybe the entire camera work is by the presence. And again, if that's the case, that really kind of changes things. And it's almost like I need to watch the movie again to think about that, to see that. So you should check it out. It's worth. And I think it's good to. I've said this before with other stuff. You watch these little small movies, these new movies, new ideas, instead of just sequel, franchise. I love those stuff. Captain America, I bought my ticket and can't wait. Marvel movies for life, right? But it's important to see like the other new, fresh stuff to support that and to say, hey, Hollywood, we want to see this stuff too. We want the big glitzy, glammy, whatever fun stuff, but we want some new stuff too. So you definitely should check it out. And thank you for checking out this show, because this is the podcast for the week. So big thanks to Andrew Loken. He is an awesome big supporter of the show. You can be a supporter by going to patreon.com/gmanfromheck. Any amount you commit to will be awesome. If you commit at the Rick Jones tier or higher, you get access to the secret podcast from Heck, which is an additional 30 minutes of podcast entertainment every single week. I need to do Amazing Spider-Man again because it's like cliffhanger. We've got this Doc Ock storyline. What happened last week is crazy. And the thing is, I don't know if I've read this next issue before, which is crazy because I've read like almost every Amazing Spider-Man, but maybe I missed this one. And I'll do it off my mind. I do want to talk about Severance, just like the whole concept of it again. But if you can't commit to a monthly commitment, you can also help out by going to coffee.com/gmanfromheck, and you can buy me a virtual cup of coffee or two. That is ko-fi.com/gmanfromheck. All right, so next week's movie should be Companion. So that's what's his name? Jack Quaid and Sophie Thatcher. So I may have said it before. Sophie Thatcher, she's up and coming. I mean, I think she's one to look out for. I mean, I loved her in Heretic. She's good in Yellow Jackets. I've only seen the first season. So she's in this movie. And Jack Quaid? Wee Huey from The Boys, and it's apparently already has 41 reviews. It's at a 90% of Rotten Tomatoes, so I'm really looking forward to that. And then we'll have more Severance, 1 or 2 episodes. I haven't decided. We'll see how it goes. Another Harley Quinn, and then I don't know. Probably definitely Prime Target. Whether it's 1 or 2, I don't know. I don't know about the other couple. It's if I can get to it. It's a matter of time, because I don't want to overload myself, because I'm already doing that. I'm stretched thin, but let me know, if you want to hear certain things or not, and hopefully, I can accommodate that. So that is going to be it. I have a busy week. I have things coming up in the evening, which is great. It's going to be fun, but things I got to do. I hope you are doing well. I hope you are managing your life. I hope you're taking care of yourself. I hope you're finding time to do fun things. And I hope you remember, be good to each other.